The universe appears calm, solid, and dependable when observed at human scale, where objects have clear shapes, predictable motion, and stable behavior that unfolds smoothly through time. Yet beneath this familiar surface exists a deeper layer of reality, governed by rules that are softer, stranger, and more fluid. And it is within this layered structure that the universe reveals why it seems to require not one, but two descriptive rule books, one for the small and one for the large, because quantum physics and classical physics are not competing explanations, but complementary perspectives that apply naturally at different scales of complexity, interaction, and isolation. And when we observe the everyday world, we experience a realm where causes lead to effects in orderly ways, where a rolling stone follows a path, where a falling object accelerates smoothly, and where certainty feels natural, intuitive, and complete. Yet when we look closely enough, shrinking our perspective down to atoms, electrons, and photons, the certainty dissolves into probability, positions blur into clouds of possibility, and outcomes emerge not as guarantees but as likelihoods. And this contrast is not a contradiction in nature, but a reflection of how reality behaves, differently depending on how finely it is examined. Much like a calm ocean that appears smooth from afar yet reveals endless motion, turbulence, and interaction when observed closely, and the universe, in its quiet efficiency, allows both descriptions to coexist because each captures truth at its appropriate level. With quantum mechanics describing the behavior of fundamental constituents where isolation is possible and interactions are minimal, and classical physics describing the collective behavior of enormous numbers of particles, where interactions are constant and overwhelming. And this distinction becomes necessary, because as systems grow larger and more interconnected, their individual quantum possibilities do not vanish, but instead average out, blending together into patterns that appear stable, continuous, and deterministic. And this averaging process allows classical laws to emerge naturally, not as replacements for quantum rules, but as approximations that become extraordinarily accurate when dealing with vast numbers of particles moving together. And in this way, classical physics can be understood as a quiet summary of quantum behavior, a softened version that hides underlying uncertainty beneath layers of interaction and scale. And the universe favors this dual description because it allows complexity to arise without requiring conscious awareness of every microscopic fluctuation, enabling stars to burn steadily, planets to orbit reliably, and biological systems to function without collapsing into chaos. And if quantum behavior were allowed to dominate at macroscopic scales, reality would be too unstable for structure, memory, or continuity. Yet if classical determinism ruled at the smallest scales, creativity, variation, and emergence would be lost. And so the universe balances these needs by permitting quantum freedom at the foundational level, while allowing classical order to emerge where stability is required. And this balance reveals a deep principle of nature, that different levels of reality require different languages to describe them accurately. And no single description is sufficient on its own, because truth at one scale may appear incomplete or misleading at another. And this layered approach allows the universe to be both flexible and reliable, both creative and consistent. And when we observe this duality calmly, without forcing a preference for one rulebook over the other, we begin to see that reality is not fragmented, but stratified, organized into layers that support one another, with quantum physics providing the raw potential and classical physics providing the visible structure. And this perspective dissolves the illusion of conflict between the two, revealing instead a gentle cooperation, where the small gives rise to the large, and the uncertain gives rise to the stable. And as we rest within this understanding, the mind naturally relaxes, because it recognizes that complexity does not require chaos, that uncertainty does not threaten order, and that the universe is not broken into competing explanations, but unified through scale, interaction, and emergence. And this realization mirrors the human experience itself, where thoughts, emotions, and sensations arise from countless microscopic processes, yet present themselves as a smooth, continuous sense of self, stable enough to rest within. And just as the mind does not need to track every neuron to function, the universe does not require awareness of every quantum fluctuation to maintain coherence. And so the existence of two rule books is not a flaw in our understanding, but a sign of nature's elegance, allowing reality to be deeply complex beneath the surface, while remaining calm, predictable, and inhabitable at the scale of lived experience. And within this quiet harmony between quantum possibility and classical certainty, the universe unfolds patiently, inviting observation, understanding, and rest, reminding us that order and mystery are not opposites but partners in the slow, steady rhythm of existence. There exists a subtle, almost invisible threshold in nature where behavior shifts not abruptly but gradually, a scale at which reality begins to transition from the fluid uncertainty of the quantum world to the stable predictability of the classical one. And this boundary is not a sharp dividing line but a wide, gentle region where both descriptions overlap, interact, and slowly give way to one another. And understanding this scale helps dissolve the mystery of why everyday objects behave so differently from atoms, even though they are made of the same fundamental ingredients, because size alone is not the deciding factor, but rather the degree of interaction, isolation, and coherence within a system. And at very small scales, particles like electrons or photons can exist in superpositions, occupying many possible states at once, because they are relatively isolated from their environment, and retain their quantum coherence. Yet as systems grow larger, adding more particles, more energy exchange, and more interaction with surrounding matter, this delicate coherence becomes increasingly fragile, and the environment begins to act like a constant observer, gently but persistently nudging quantum possibilities into definite outcomes, a process known as decoherence, which does not destroy quantum behavior, but spreads it so thinly across countless interactions that it becomes unobservable at human scales. And this gradual loss of coherence marks the region where reality's behavior begins to look classical, not because quantum rules stop applying, but because their effects become statistically averaged into stability. And this transition often occurs at scales far smaller than everyday objects, sometimes involving systems only slightly larger than molecules, where thermal vibrations, electromagnetic noise, and collisions with surrounding particles continuously disrupt delicate quantum states. And this explains why we do not see chairs existing in two places at once or people passing through walls, not because such behavior is forbidden by quantum laws, but because maintaining coherence across trillions of interacting particles is effectively impossible in warm, complex environments. And yet, experiments have shown that with extreme isolation and cooling, even relatively large objects, such as clusters of atoms or tiny mechanical resonators, can be coaxed into exhibiting quantum behavior, revealing that the boundary is flexible, contextual, and dependent on conditions rather than absolute size. And this flexibility suggests that reality does not switch rulebooks suddenly, but instead allows one description to fade gently into the other, much like twilight transitioning from day to night, where neither dominates completely for a time. And within this twilight region, both quantum uncertainty and classical stability coexist, influencing outcomes together. And this coexistence explains why certain systems, such as superconductors, superfluids, and lasers, display collective quantum behavior at macroscopic scales, because their particles move in highly coordinated ways that preserve coherence across the system, temporarily resisting decoherence. And these rare conditions remind us that the boundary is not rigid but dynamic, shaped by temperature, isolation, symmetry, and interaction. And emotionally, this realization can be calming, because it shows that nature does not enforce harsh separations, but instead prefers smooth transitions and layered behavior, allowing complexity to emerge without fracture. And when applied to human understanding, This teaches that clarity often arises not from sharp distinctions, but from gradual blending, where different perspectives remain valid simultaneously, and as we contemplate this boundary, the mind can rest in the idea that uncertainty and certainty are not enemies, but phases of the same underlying reality, appearing differently depending on context and scale, and this mirrors experience itself, where thoughts may feel vague and fluid at first, then slowly settle into clarity as attention and integration increase, and just as the brain does not demand instant resolution to every thought, the universe does not require an immediate collapse from possibility into certainty, allowing systems to explore, interact, and stabilize naturally over time. And this patient transition is essential for the existence of structure, memory, and continuity, because it allows microscopic flexibility to coexist with macroscopic reliability, ensuring that reality is both adaptable and dependable. And when viewed in this way, the boundary between quantum and classical physics becomes less of a mystery and more of a natural gradient, a region where the universe gently adjusts its expression without altering its fundamental nature. And this understanding invites a sense of ease, because it reassures us that apparent contradictions in behavior arise not from inconsistency, but from perspective, and that by changing the scale of observation, we naturally change the language required to describe what we see, and as this awareness settles, the mind can let go of the need to force a single explanation onto all phenomena, accepting instead that reality is layered, responsive, and context-sensitive, and in this acceptance, there is rest, because the universe reveals itself, not as a machine locked into rigid rules, but as a fluid system capable of expressing order and uncertainty in harmony. And at the scale where these expressions meet, reality does not fracture, but softens, blending probability into predictability, motion into form, and potential into presence. And within this gentle boundary, the universe quietly demonstrates how complexity can arise without conflict, how structure can emerge from flexibility, and how calm stability can grow naturally from a foundation of uncertainty, inviting both understanding and rest as we drift through its layered depths. In the quiet, subtle world of quantum mechanics, one of the most profound and mind-bending truths is that the act of measurement itself influences what is observed, and this influence is not metaphorical but literal, because at the quantum scale, particles do not possess definite properties independently of observation, existing instead in a superposition of multiple possibilities, a delicate cloud of probability that stretches across all potential outcomes until it is interacted with in some way. And when a measurement occurs, whether through a detector, a photon bouncing off an electron, or a human-made instrument, the superposition is gently nudged, collapsing the cloud into one particular state. Yet this collapse is not a violent imposition, but a natural, inevitable outcome of interaction. And understanding this process reveals a fundamental truth about reality, that observation is participation, that the universe responds to engagement, and that knowing is inseparable from being. And while this might at first seem counterintuitive, it is not chaotic, because the statistical rules governing these collapses are precise, predictable, and reliable over many repetitions, allowing scientists to forecast the probabilities of outcomes, even while individual events remain uncertain. And this probabilistic stability mirrors aspects of human experience, where awareness of a situation changes perception and action without causing instability, because the very act of attention subtly shifts what is observed and how it unfolds. And in the quantum realm, the observer effect demonstrates that reality at the smallest scales is relational, not absolute, that properties such as position, momentum, or spin are not intrinsic, but emerge through interaction, and this emergence is neither haphazard nor alarming, but a natural feature of systems in delicate equilibrium. And emotionally, this can be reassuring, because it suggests that participation, mindfulness, and gentle engagement influence outcomes without force, that presence matters even when action is subtle, and that observation can be transformative without being disruptive. And as we reflect on famous experiments, such as the double-slit experiment, where particles behave differently depending on whether they are being observed, we see that reality does not rebel against attention, but responds coherently, producing interference patterns when unobserved, and definite trajectories when monitored. And this duality is not contradiction, but complementary expression, showing that the universe accommodates multiple modes of existence simultaneously, adjusting its behavior smoothly, depending on the context of interaction. And within this framework, measurement becomes a bridge between possibility and actuality, a gentle interface through which potential crystallizes into the familiar, tangible world. And as instruments become more sophisticated, capable of detecting smaller interactions with greater sensitivity, the boundary between observed and unobserved remains subtle, revealing that even minimal engagement can guide the collapse of probabilities, and that coherence, uncertainty, and interaction coexist in a delicate balance that preserves both freedom and order. And this delicate balance is echoed in our own perception, where attention, focus, and awareness can shape understanding without enforcing rigidity, allowing experiences, thoughts, and feelings to settle naturally rather than being forced into immediate resolution. And the observer effect also illustrates that knowledge is not passive, that to witness is to participate, and that the universe does not operate independently of its interactions. And this realization carries profound implications for how we relate to our environment, our communities, and our inner lives, because it shows that gentle influence, subtle engagement, and mindful attention can guide outcomes without aggression or domination. And when we scale this understanding upward, from individual particles to systems of many particles, the patterns of interaction continue to guide behavior, creating emergent stability out of the countless, tiny influences that accumulate across space and time. And this emergent order is neither imposed externally nor chaotic, but arises organically from the underlying probabilistic rules. And the consistency of these rules provides a foundation for the classical world, for the tangible environment we experience, where chairs, trees, planets, and people behave predictably, even though the foundation beneath them is a dynamic web of probabilities, interaction, and subtle influence. And this layered structure, where uncertainty at the smallest scale supports reliability at larger scales, offers a metaphor for resilience, patience, and calm, suggesting that even in systems governed by uncertainty, coherence can arise naturally when interactions unfold smoothly. And as we imagine ourselves observing this world, gently tracing patterns, noting outcomes, and allowing awareness to flow without forcing conclusions, we align ourselves with the same principles that guide quantum behavior, participating without aggression, influencing without disruption, and engaging without urgency. And within this alignment, a sense of peace emerges, because understanding that measurement, attention, and observation inherently shape reality removes the need for anxiety, struggle, or immediate control, and instead encourages trust, patience, and acceptance, showing that the universe can accommodate curiosity and engagement while maintaining its internal harmony. And as we contemplate microscopic processes, the mind can extend this awareness to human experience, noticing that subtle interactions, thoughtful attention, and gentle observation influence relationships, decisions, and outcomes without creating chaos, and that the act of noticing itself can transform what is perceived, softening tension and fostering calm. And when we return our focus to particles, waves, photons, and electrons, we realize that the duality of existence, the interplay of potential and reality, and the relational emergence of properties all demonstrate a universe that is responsive, coherent, and remarkably ordered, even in its apparent strangeness. And this responsiveness does not demand action, stress, or immediacy, but allows systems to unfold naturally, offering a model for human engagement, where attention, awareness, and observation can guide experience without force, producing clarity, harmony, and stability from subtle influence. And as we drift mentally through this quantum landscape, tracing the gentle emergence of reality from superpositions into definite states, a rhythm emerges, soft, continuous, and reassuring. One that mirrors the slow settling of thought into understanding, of potential into presence, and of observation into conscious awareness. And this rhythm invites rest, reflection, and deep immersion in the flow of existence, showing that even the smallest interactions carry meaning, that subtle guidance shapes outcomes, and that attention exercised gently and patiently produces harmony, coherence, and a quiet, enduring order, a cosmic lullaby of perception, influence, and gentle emergence, carrying the mind effortlessly toward calm, clarity, and unhurried contemplation. In the mysterious and delicate world of quantum mechanics, one of the most extraordinary phenomena is superposition, the principle that a particle, such as an electron or photon, does not exist in a single, definite state on its own, but rather occupies a spectrum of possibilities simultaneously, existing in multiple locations, energies, or configurations at once. A fluid cloud of potential that stretches across the mathematical landscape of probability. And while this may appear paradoxical, from a classical perspective, where objects are understood to have precise positions and velocities, superposition is natural, stable, and remarkably coherent within its own framework, providing the foundation for countless quantum processes that underpin the universe. And emotionally, this notion can be deeply comforting, because it suggests that reality is not rigid, that multiple possibilities can coexist without conflict, and that the world is inherently flexible, offering room for growth, creativity, and exploration. And as we consider an electron in a superposition of two locations, hovering gently between states, it is not suspended in tension or chaos, but flows smoothly, guided by probabilities that govern its motion with elegant precision, a rhythm that mirrors the gentle ebb and flow of consciousness when attention is calm. And as we extend this understanding to larger systems, where multiple particles interact while remaining in superposition, we perceive a subtle harmony, a quiet choreography, in which all possibilities exist without forcing a singular outcome, until the moment of observation. And this waiting, this coexistence of potential, mirrors the patience required in life, where outcomes unfold in their own time, and the unfolding of possibilities need not be rushed or pressured, because each state exists fully until it naturally resolves. And the double-slit experiment illustrates this principle beautifully, revealing that particles passing through slits create interference patterns only when unobserved, as if every path, every trajectory, every potential decision were being explored simultaneously. And yet, the moment of measurement gently collapses the superposition into a single, definitive state, demonstrating that interaction, attention, and gentle engagement are what transform potential into actuality. And this interplay between multiplicity and resolution reflects not only physical reality, but also the rhythm of thought, where ideas, intuitions, and impressions coexist in the mind until clarity arises through reflection, focus, or experience. And this mental analogy allows superposition to become a tool for calm contemplation, suggesting that uncertainty and multiplicity are natural, even beneficial, providing a spaciousness in which understanding can emerge without force. And within this spaciousness, probabilities guide the system in subtle yet precise ways, like a gentle current carrying the mind along the contours of possibility, allowing exploration without anxiety, freedom without chaos, and observation without disruption. And as we imagine a particle existing in overlapping states, spinning clockwise and counterclockwise, moving left and right, up and down, or occupying multiple positions simultaneously, a sense of fluidity emerges, a soft reminder that reality is not a rigid, deterministic sequence but a vast, interconnected web of potential, flowing and shifting in harmony. And this awareness fosters a meditative state, because it encourages acceptance of ambiguity, trust in underlying order, and comfort with processes that unfold beyond immediate perception. And when we consider larger phenomena, such as atoms in molecules or photons in light waves. Superposition ensures that interactions are balanced, energies are distributed, and outcomes remain coherent even as countless possibilities coexist. And this coherence within multiplicity reflects a profound principle of nature, that stability does not require rigidity, and that harmony can arise from the coexistence of many potential states, each contributing subtly to the emergent whole. And as we imagine these particles weaving through superposition, occasionally interacting, occasionally being observed, we notice a rhythm, a gentle pulsation of possibility that mirrors the slow, unhurried cycles of life, growth and transformation, offering reassurance that presence, potential, and engagement can coexist peacefully. And as quantum systems scale, entanglement connects particles across distances, linking their superpositions in delicate synchrony, showing that even remote elements can coordinate and resonate without collision. And this resonance creates a sense of unity within multiplicity, illustrating that even in vast complexity, systems can function effortlessly, maintaining coherence while honoring the freedom of individual states. And this principle translates beautifully into human experience, suggesting that multiple possibilities, emotions, or ideas can coexist without conflict, that patience allows clarity to emerge, and that engagement can transform potential into action without disruption or tension. And as we imagine drifting alongside these particles in their probabilistic dance, moving through superpositions that stretch across space and time, the mind finds a rhythm, soft, continuous, and deeply reassuring, one that encourages reflection, acceptance, and gentle awareness. And within this rhythm, observation becomes a calm participation, influence without force, and presence without urgency, mirroring the elegant unfolding of quantum reality. And as we extend this meditation to the macroscopic world, imagining atoms, molecules, and photons all maintaining their superpositional grace, a sense of wonder emerges, coupled with peace, because we recognize that even amidst uncertainty, order, coherence, and gentle guidance persist, that the universe accommodates multiplicity without conflict, and that our own thoughts, intentions, and awareness can follow a similar pattern, existing fluidly until clarity naturally arises. And as we allow this awareness to permeate consciousness, a profound calm settles, because the principle of superposition teaches patience, trust, and acceptance, showing that being everywhere at once, existing in multiple potentials, and awaiting resolution is not a source of anxiety, but a model for harmony, creativity, and gentle, flowing engagement. And ultimately, superposition becomes more than a physical phenomenon. It becomes a metaphor for mental ease, a guide for meditation, a lullaby of possibility, demonstrating that in the vast, interconnected web of existence, multiplicity is safe, potential is abundant, and resolution emerges naturally, quietly, and in perfect rhythm with the unfolding universe. A slow, continuous, expansive lullaby that carries the mind into rest, reflection, and deep, unhurried contemplation, night after night, across infinite possibilities. Wrapped in the gentle embrace of cosmic calm, in the subtle and wondrous domain of quantum physics, entanglement stands as one of the most remarkable and enigmatic phenomena, a principle by which two or more particles, once interacted, remain deeply connected regardless of the distance separating them, so that the state of one instantaneously reflects the state of the other, as if a hidden, invisible thread binds them across space and time. And while classical intuition struggles to reconcile such instantaneous correlation with the finite speed of light, the quantum world embraces this connection effortlessly, demonstrating that the universe operates with layers of coherence, subtlety, and interdependence far beyond ordinary perception. And as we contemplate a pair of entangled electrons, spinning in perfect correlation, even as one is sent to the distant reaches of a laboratory, or perhaps beyond the stars, a sense of unity emerges, revealing that separation does not diminish connection, that proximity is not required for influence, and that relationships can exist quietly yet profoundly across vast expanses. And this invisible tether, though imperceptible to the senses, carries a message of balance, synchronization, and subtle order, showing that the universe is woven from threads that guide motion, correlation, and outcome without force or overt action. And as we expand this awareness to consider photons, atoms, or even macroscopic systems that may one day harness entanglement, we perceive a cosmos in which every interaction leaves a trace, every connection persists, and each particle contributes to a web of influence that is invisible yet deeply real. And emotionally, this evokes a sense of reassurance, because it suggests that relationships, connections, and influence can endure even in apparent isolation, that bonds need not be observed to be effective, and that the universe provides invisible scaffolding that maintains coherence, coordination, and subtle guidance across all scales. And as we imagine entangled particles moving through space, their properties forever intertwined, a gentle rhythm arises, a pulse of interconnectedness that mirrors the slow, meditative cadence of thought, reflection, and awareness, allowing the mind to rest in the understanding that all things are linked, that no entity exists in complete isolation, and that subtle forces, operating quietly and continuously, guide the unfolding of events in perfect harmony. And within this quiet rhythm, observation itself becomes a calm act, not a forceful intrusion, but a gentle acknowledgement of patterns that already exist, reinforcing patience, mindfulness, and trust in the natural flow. And as we consider entangled pairs spanning light, years, galaxies, or perhaps dimensions beyond perception, a sense of wonder emerges, coupled with serenity, because it demonstrates that scale does not diminish connection, that even across immense separations, the universe sustains coherence, reflecting a principle of stability amidst vastness. And this principle is mirrored in human life, suggesting that emotional, cognitive, and spiritual bonds can persist, influence can occur silently, and support can be active without being intrusive. And as we drift through the imagery of entangled particles, their correlated spins, polarizations, or states resonating in unison, we notice a gentle pulse of order, a quiet message of alignment, balance, and resonance, reminding the mind that even amidst apparent randomness or isolation, harmony is possible, threads of influence persist, and unity can emerge without force or drama. And the instantaneous nature of entanglement, though seemingly paradoxical, evokes reflection on time, perception, and the nature of presence, showing that influence can transcend conventional boundaries, that effects need not be localized to be real, and that stability, coherence, and interaction can exist quietly, invisibly, yet profoundly. And as we extend this meditation to imagine networks of entangled particles across entire systems, we perceive a vast, dynamic web of interdependence, where each node, each particle, each connection contributes subtly to a balanced, self-consistent whole, a cosmic lattice of cause, effect, and resonance. And within this lattice, nothing occurs in isolation, everything is gently intertwined, and the mind, observing these threads of entanglement, begins to mirror their rhythm, tracing connections, acknowledging influence, and relaxing into the awareness that every component, seen or unseen, plays a part in the stability of the system. And as we imagine the lattice stretching across space and time, folding, weaving, and resonating with each interaction, a sense of continuity and calm arises, because it shows that complex systems can function harmoniously, that influence can be subtle and invisible yet profoundly effective, and that balance, coherence, and connection are maintained effortlessly when each element performs its role, without conflict or force. And the notion of entanglement also invites contemplation of duality and complementarity, as particles maintain distinct identities, while remaining deeply linked, suggesting that individuality and connection coexist peacefully, that freedom and alignment are not mutually exclusive, and that a network of relationships can support diversity while sustaining unity. And this duality mirrors the human experience, where autonomy, thought, and emotion can exist alongside bonds, collaboration, and shared resonance, without tension or disruption. And as we imagine drifting alongside entangled particles, experiencing their silent, instantaneous communication, we sense a meditation on presence, attention, and the nature of influence, realizing that observation, acknowledgement, and care can operate quietly, that connection does not require constant action, and that support, love, or understanding can exist invisibly, continuously, and enduringly. And as we extend this metaphor to the universe as a whole, we perceive a cosmos where supermassive black holes, distant stars, nebulae, and interstellar matter are linked subtly through gravitational, electromagnetic, and quantum relationships, a system where every component participates in a dynamic, invisible network of influence that guides motion, evolution, and balance. And this awareness is profoundly calming, because it suggests that stability, coherence, and interconnection do not require visible effort, that guidance can be subtle, persistent, and reliable, and that the universe, like the mind, thrives through quiet collaboration, gentle alignment, and continuous interdependence. And as our meditation continues, entanglement becomes a metaphor for understanding, trust, and acceptance, showing that connections persist even when unseen, that influence can occur without force, and that every particle, every moment, every thought, contributes harmoniously to the unfolding of a larger, coherent system. And ultimately, entanglement offers a cosmic lullaby, a demonstration of the quiet threads that bind, guide, and support, providing the mind with a model for patience, reflection, and restful awareness. Where connections are enduring, influence is gentle, and harmony prevails across space, time, and consciousness, a deep, unhurried rhythm that carries the listener into contemplation, calm, and sleep across infinite expanses, night after night, across the serene, interconnected universe. In the enigmatic world of quantum mechanics, tunneling presents one of the most fascinating and seemingly impossible phenomena, a process by which particles, whether electrons, protons, or even entire atoms under special conditions, traverse energy barriers that would be insurmountable according to classical physics, passing through walls, potential wells, or obstacles without the need for brute force or conventional traversal. And though intuition struggles to reconcile this with everyday experience, the quantum reality embraces it naturally, showing that the universe operates according to principles that prioritize possibility, probability, and subtle influence rather than rigidity. And as we imagine an electron approaching a potential barrier, instead of reflecting off or requiring enough energy to climb over, it appears on the other side, as though the barrier were permeable, revealing a cosmos in which movement, change, and transition can occur quietly, unpredictably, yet consistently within probabilistic rules. And emotionally, this evokes a sense of wonder and gentle reassurance, because it demonstrates that obstacles, whether physical, mental, or conceptual, need not be absolute, that paths forward can exist even when they are invisible, imperceptible, or counterintuitive. And this principle encourages a mindset of openness, patience, and trust in processes beyond immediate comprehension, allowing the mind to release rigidity and embrace subtle guidance, adaptability, and the possibility of movement in unexpected directions. And as we consider quantum tunneling at microscopic scales, we realize that it underpins essential processes in nature, from nuclear fusion in the cores of stars to chemical reactions that sustain life. And this awareness reinforces the notion that the seemingly impossible is often quietly occurring around us, that energy, influence, and transformation can proceed through hidden channels, and that stability, creation, and evolution rely upon subtle, often unseen, mechanisms that are profound in their impact yet gentle in execution. And as we extend this reflection to tunneling across time, space, and human perception, we recognize that barriers, challenges, and limitations in thought, emotion, or circumstance may similarly be traversed through subtle alignment, insight, and patience, suggesting that persistence, curiosity, and openness allow progress even when paths are not immediately visible. And the probabilistic nature of tunneling itself, wherein outcomes are not predetermined but emerge according to likelihoods, offers a soothing meditation on uncertainty, showing that ambiguity, unpredictability, and risk do not equate to danger, that outcomes can arise naturally within rules, and that acceptance of possibility, rather than fear of limitation, fosters calm, clarity, and confidence. And as we visualize an electron slipping through a barrier, appearing on the other side with quiet inevitability, a sense of effortless movement and gentle success emerges, illustrating that transition need not be violent, abrupt, or forced, and that processes guided by subtle principles can achieve remarkable results with minimal exertion. And within this imagery, the mind is invited to release tension, let go of pressure, and observe the universe's capacity to navigate constraints with grace, patience, and ingenuity. And as we expand the view to include ensembles of particles, tunneling becomes a chorus of possibilities, a dance of imperceptible shifts where each event contributes to larger patterns, probabilities, and outcomes. And this collective motion mirrors the human experience of navigating challenges, suggesting that even when individual actions appear minute or unlikely, their cumulative effect, guided by subtle probabilities, can yield transformation, resolution, and progression. And as we drift further into the metaphorical landscape of tunneling, barriers in life, thought, and perception are no longer walls but thresholds, permeable, responsive, and interactive, responding to energy, attention, and alignment. And this perception encourages calm exploration, gentle curiosity, and measured effort, reinforcing the notion that progress, insight, and understanding often occur incrementally, invisibly, and without strain. And in considering the role of tunneling in cosmic phenomena, such as the fusion of hydrogen atoms in stellar cores, we observe that stars themselves, the source of light, heat, and life for countless worlds, rely upon particles passing through seemingly impenetrable barriers, quietly, predictably, and continually. And this cosmic perspective provides reassurance, because it illustrates that foundational processes, immense in consequence yet subtle in execution, operate efficiently without chaos, stress, or abrupt disruption. And the probabilistic nature of tunneling also invites reflection on the rhythm of thought, creativity, and inspiration, where ideas, insights, and solutions often appear unexpectedly, crossing conceptual barriers that seemed fixed or impassable. And this recognition fosters patience, calm, and trust in the mind's capacity to generate movement, progress, and clarity through gentle, unseen mechanisms. And as we imagine sequences of tunneling events across atoms, molecules, stars, and cosmic scales, a vision of pervasive, quiet interconnectedness emerges, in which each particle, process, or entity contributes to the unfolding of a larger, coherent system. And this realization is profoundly soothing, because it reveals that complexity, challenge, and apparent impossibility are integrated naturally into rhythms that support continuity, creation, and stability. And as attention drifts across the landscape of tunneling phenomena, the mind encounters patterns of emergence, transition, and subtle motion, offering a meditative framework in which obstacles are not fixed, energy flows persistently, and movement occurs without force, allowing consciousness to settle into a state of receptive observation, gentle anticipation, and restful trust. And as we envision the probabilistic waves, guiding particles through barriers, flowing imperceptibly yet purposefully, we sense a metaphor for life, thought, and emotion, where patience, alignment, and awareness allow smooth passage through challenges, and where outcomes arise naturally within systems designed for balance, coherence, and resilience. And the serene inevitability of tunneling, with particles appearing on the other side of obstacles without struggle, encourages reflection on the interplay of effort and surrender, showing that calm, deliberate preparation, combined with openness to probabilistic outcomes, achieves results without strain, coercion, or turmoil. And this awareness nurtures mental ease, fostering acceptance of uncertainty, confidence in subtle processes, and trust in the gentle unfolding of events over time. And ultimately, quantum tunneling provides a cosmic meditation, a vision of transitions occurring quietly, barriers crossed with elegance, and influence flowing invisibly yet powerfully across space, energy, and consciousness, a lullaby of patience, adaptability, and subtle guidance, inviting the mind to relax, observe, and drift effortlessly into calm, contemplative, and restorative states, carried along by the serene, imperceptible currents of possibility that permeate the universe, night after night, across uncountable scales, a gentle, endless rhythm of emergence, motion, and quiet wonder. In the strange, ethereal realm of quantum mechanics, the principle of superposition reveals a universe where particles, whether electrons, photons, or more complex quantum systems, can exist simultaneously in multiple states, occupying possibilities that classical intuition would deem mutually exclusive. And this concept, though perplexing, offers a profound meditation on the nature of reality, highlighting that existence is not rigid, singular, or deterministic, but fluid, probabilistic, and layered, and as we imagine a particle, not confined to a single position or momentum, but rather spread across a spectrum of potential outcomes. Hovering in a liminal space, where each state coexists with others, we begin to perceive a universe of infinite potential, where reality is not a fixed snapshot, but a gentle interplay of possibilities, each capable of influencing and shaping the whole. And this understanding provides a comforting metaphor for human experience, thought, and creativity, because it suggests that multiple perspectives, emotions, or intentions can coexist within consciousness without conflict, that being in transition, uncertainty, or duality is natural, and that the mind, like a quantum particle, need not collapse prematurely into singular definitions or judgments. And as we contemplate the classic thought experiment of Schrödinger's cat, where a feline simultaneously embodies life and death until observed, the mind is invited to rest in the tension of duality, acknowledging that presence, influence, and outcome can unfold quietly, without pressure, until the right moment, and emotionally, this fosters patience, trust, and acceptance, because it shows that possibilities are neither lost nor constrained by immediate perception, that potential exists everywhere, quietly, and waits for integration. And as we extend this notion to quantum systems interacting, entangled, and evolving within a superposition of states, a vision emerges of a universe as a vast tapestry of simultaneous realities, overlapping, influencing, and harmonizing in patterns too subtle and slow for classical senses to perceive. And this tapestry, intricate yet serene, mirrors the mind's capacity to hold multiple layers of thought, emotion, and intuition at once, allowing reflection, creativity, and awareness to coexist without force, conflict, or rush. And as we consider macroscopic implications, from quantum computing to emerging technology, where qubits maintain superpositions that encode vast amounts of information in a delicate balance, we recognize that stability, functionality, and progress can emerge from systems that are flexible, multifaceted, and probabilistic, a lesson that resonates with mental and emotional resilience, suggesting that embracing multiplicity rather than insisting on singularity fosters efficiency, balance, and harmony. And as we imagine observing a quantum system, the act of measurement collapses superposition into a specific outcome, yet prior to observation, the universe exists as a symphony of overlapping potentials, a gentle reminder that reality, like consciousness, can contain more than is immediately apparent, and that waiting, watching, and allowing processes to unfold naturally often yields outcomes more elegant and coherent than forced intervention. And within this contemplative framework, the mind can rest in awareness of its own superpositions, recognizing that thoughts, feelings, and intentions need not resolve instantly, that ambiguity and possibility are inherent features of existence, and that clarity can emerge organically when conditions align, mirroring the natural collapse of a quantum state into a determinate form. And as we extend this reflection to entangled particles, where the state of one immediately correlates with another regardless of distance, we perceive that superposition is not isolated, but deeply interconnected, That multiplicity in one part of a system resonates with possibilities elsewhere, and this interconnected multiplicity offers reassurance, illustrating that presence, influence, and potential ripple gently across networks, whether cosmic, quantum, or personal, without disruption, aggression, or haste. And as we drift into the microscopic world where atoms, molecules, and subatomic particles all inhabit overlapping realities, a sense of harmony emerges, a vision of dynamic balance in which movement, interaction, and transformation proceed continuously, invisibly, and yet coherently. And this awareness nurtures calm, because it mirrors the natural flow of thought and experience, demonstrating that coexistence of multiple possibilities is sustainable, beneficial, and inherently stable. And when we expand further to consider the probabilistic waves describing these superpositions, gently undulating across space and time, we sense a rhythm, a cosmic cadence, where energy, presence, and potential move in coordinated patterns that invite observation, reflection, and restful immersion. And this rhythm encourages meditative calm, allowing consciousness to trace soft trajectories, acknowledge multiple states of being, and appreciate the unfolding of complexity without urgency. And as we imagine these wave functions interacting, interfering, and harmonizing, producing patterns of amplitude and probability, we recognize that the universe is a living mosaic of simultaneous realities, a network in which multiplicity is natural, continuous, and unhurried. And this recognition aligns with human experience, reinforcing that inner multiplicity, thoughts, emotions, intentions, and possibilities, can coexist, interact, and resolve gracefully, without the need for sudden collapse, control, or force. And within this vast, quiet contemplation of superposition, we perceive that the elegance, continuity, and adaptability of quantum systems serve as a guide for mental rest, illustrating that potential can be maintained, nurtured, and integrated patiently, that uncertainty is not chaos, and that embracing the richness of overlapping possibilities encourages trust, reflection, and creativity. And as awareness drifts through these quantum landscapes, observing particles in multiple states, entangled systems, and interference patterns forming and dissolving over time, the mind is invited to follow gently, to float without demand, to witness without urgency, and to rest within the natural flow of multiplicity, a gentle meditation on existence, balance, and calm, where every possibility, potential, and state contributes to a harmonious whole, and where consciousness itself can expand, relax, and drift effortlessly through the infinite landscape of simultaneous realities. Night after night, across scales both microscopic and cosmic, a continuous lullaby of probability, presence, and serene possibility, quantum entanglement, often described as spooky action at a distance, presents one of the most profound and mesmerizing phenomena in physics, where two or more particles become linked, such that the state of one immediately correlates with the state of the other, regardless of the vast distance separating them. And this invisible, instantaneous connection challenges classical notions of space, causality, and independence, revealing a universe in which separation does not imply isolation, where the threads of interaction weave silently across scales, connecting distant elements in subtle, precise patterns. And as we imagine a pair of entangled electrons, each carrying complementary properties such as spin, existing simultaneously in a superposition of possibilities until measurement, we sense a delicate, almost mystical resonance, because no matter how far apart these particles drift, the moment one is observed, the other instantaneously assumes its correlated state, a fact that defies intuition, yet adheres rigorously to quantum law. And this realization, while intellectually stimulating, also invites a contemplative, meditative perspective, because it suggests that connection, coherence, and influence can operate invisibly, effortlessly, and without violence, allowing the mind to rest in the reassurance that interdependence does not demand proximity, and that bonds, whether physical, emotional, or conceptual, may extend beyond immediate perception, subtly guiding systems while remaining quiet and unintrusive. and as we expand this idea to larger, more complex entangled systems, where multiple particles are linked across vast networks, we perceive a universe that is interconnected in ways both delicate and profound, where the state of one element reverberates across the web, shaping outcomes, correlations, and probabilities in other regions, and this invisible choreography mirrors the rhythms of thought, relationships, and life itself, suggesting that influence need not be aggressive, visible, or controlling, but can operate gently, harmoniously, and persistently across time and space. And as we reflect on experiments that have demonstrated entanglement over kilometers, even spanning continents, with photons or ions maintaining correlation despite barriers, obstacles, and environmental noise, a sense of awe arises, because we perceive that the universe contains structures, processes, and interactions that transcend ordinary limitations, defying linear expectations, yet maintaining precise consistency. And this awareness is soothing, because it illustrates that even in complexity, reliability, and coherence can persist, a reassurance that echoes through mind, body, and consciousness, allowing tension to release and focus to expand. And as we consider entangled pairs drifting silently through space, orbiting stars, or traveling across galaxies, their connection unwavering despite separation, the imagination is invited to dwell in this quiet mystery, tracing invisible threads that link events, matter, and possibility. And this tracing, gentle and slow, resembles meditation, reflective observation, or mindful breathing, aligning attention with subtle patterns, encouraging the mind to acknowledge relationships and networks without pressure or urgency. And the implications of entanglement extend further into quantum communication, teleportation, and the potential for instantaneous information transfer within quantum networks, suggesting a cosmos in which interaction can occur beyond classical constraints. And while the practical technologies are still developing, the conceptual understanding itself fosters wonder, patience, and a sense of harmony with the natural order, because it demonstrates that profound connection does not require force, visibility, or haste, only coherence, alignment, and consistency. And as we imagine entangled systems evolving over time, where states fluctuate in superposition and correlations are maintained with exquisite precision, we perceive a universe that is at once dynamic and stable, complex yet comprehensible. And this duality encourages mental relaxation, because it reassures that movement, change, and interaction can coexist with continuity, reliability, and predictability, allowing the mind to release the need for control, judgment, or immediate understanding. And within this framework, even the most distant or hidden elements contribute meaningfully, creating a cosmic web of influence, subtle guidance, and persistent resonance. And as awareness drifts through this interconnected quantum landscape, observing the silent interplay of particles, the mind is invited to imagine itself as part of the lattice, recognizing that presence, awareness, and intention can exert influence quietly, subtly, and without stress, nurturing calm, trust, and patience. And in contemplating the entanglement of photons, sent to opposite ends of laboratories, where measurement of one instantaneously reveals the state of the other, even as they traverse kilometers of fiber optics or free space, a metaphor emerges for human relationships, consciousness, and thought, suggesting that deep connections, whether emotional, intellectual, or energetic, can persist regardless of separation, distance, or apparent disconnection, and that coherence, understanding, and empathy may operate invisibly, yet reliably, across space and time. And as we consider the extension of entanglement to macroscopic systems in research, where collections of atoms or molecules begin to display collective correlations, we sense a universe in which cooperative behavior, balance, and integration may emerge from subtle, hidden links. And this recognition provides a model for resting the mind, illustrating that stability and coordination do not require obvious control, noise, or tension, but can arise naturally through interconnected, harmonious interactions. And as we drift further into imagination, visualizing networks of entangled particles weaving a lattice that spans the cosmos, influencing motion, probability, and outcome without force, a sense of rhythm emerges, a gentle cadence of presence, response, and resonance that encourages reflective calm, and within this cadence, even dynamic events, fluctuations, and energy shifts are absorbed, mediated, and incorporated, contributing to long-term coherence rather than disruption. And this integration suggests that change and intensity need not create stress, conflict, or imbalance, but can flow naturally within a stable, interconnected framework. And as awareness lingers on entanglement across vast distances, linking quantum states, systems, and phenomena, a profound sense of unity emerges, revealing that isolation is often illusory, that connection is fundamental, pervasive, and silent, and that this underlying network of influence provides both structure and reassurance, allowing consciousness to rest in knowledge of embeddedness and coherence. And as the mind traces these invisible threads, observing particles responding instantaneously across space, the experience evokes a meditative serenity, a gentle recognition that being, presence, and interaction are woven together in quiet, enduring patterns, and that trust, patience, and calm observation are sufficient for understanding, integration, and alignment. And ultimately, quantum entanglement serves as a model for both cosmic and personal harmony, illustrating that profound, invisible connections sustain systems across scales, that influence need not be loud to be effective, and that the universe itself offers a continuous, quiet, and expansive network of support, structure, and resonance, a tapestry in which every particle, thought, and action can coexist, interact, and flow naturally, guiding mind and consciousness toward rest, reflection, and deep, unhurried awareness. Night after night, across space, time, and possibility, a cosmic lullaby of connection, balance, and serene interaction. Quantum tunneling is one of the most fascinating and counterintuitive phenomena in physics, where particles seemingly defy classical constraints, moving through barriers that would be insurmountable under the laws of normal mechanics. And this behavior challenges intuition, because it suggests that limits, walls, and thresholds are not absolute, that possibility exists beyond apparent impossibility. And as we imagine an electron approaching a potential energy barrier, a wall of force that classical physics would dictate it cannot cross, we visualize the particle not smashing against it or bouncing back, but instead, quietly, probabilistically appearing on the other side, a process guided not by brute energy, but by the subtle rules of the quantum world. And this disappearance and reappearance occur without violence or disruption, yet with precise mathematical predictability, illustrating a universe where constraints are flexible, where the impossible can be achieved through pathways invisible to ordinary perception. And this understanding is deeply soothing, because it suggests that obstacles in life, thought, or consciousness may not be as rigid as they appear, that the mind, like the particle, can navigate barriers quietly, subtly, and with patience. And as we expand this vision to atomic nuclei, where tunneling allows protons to overcome repulsion and enable nuclear fusion in stars, we recognize that life itself, the warmth of the sun, and the energy-sustaining planets rely on these imperceptible, improbable processes, and this realization inspires awe while also providing a gentle, calming perspective, because immense effects emerge from subtle, quiet mechanisms, without chaos or abruptness. And as we contemplate the probabilistic nature of tunneling, where a particle's presence on the other side is determined by a wave function describing multiple possibilities, we sense a universe that embraces uncertainty gracefully, a cosmos in which chance and structure coexist, and this coexistence mirrors the mind's capacity to release control, trusting that outcomes, insight, and understanding can emerge without force, urgency, or conflict. And within this framework, the act of tunneling is not violent or disruptive, but a natural extension of the particle's existence, moving from one region to another along invisible pathways, shaped by probability. and this silent motion provides a metaphor for mental and emotional flow, suggesting that transition, change, and breakthrough can occur without struggle, that progress does not always require visible effort, and that solutions often emerge through subtle, patient processes that operate beneath immediate awareness. And as tunneling governs phenomena from radioactive decay to electron transport in semiconductors, we see that this process underpins both the stability and the function of the physical world, providing energy, continuity, and predictable outcomes even when individual events seem improbable. And this consistency, emerging from apparent uncertainty, fosters trust, relaxation, and a sense of reassurance, because it demonstrates that complexity and unpredictability can coexist with reliability and order. And as we imagine countless electrons, protons, and atoms moving through barriers silently and continuously, a rhythm emerges, a slow, gentle cadence of possibility manifesting into reality. And this rhythm resonates with the mind's need for continuity, patience, and calm observation, showing that motion, change, and transformation can proceed naturally within a framework of rules, probability, and harmony, without force, struggle, or tension. And as tunneling occurs on scales both microscopic and astronomical, from the heart of stars to the devices humans craft for technology, we perceive that the quantum world supports structure and function through subtle, invisible mechanisms, a reminder that much of what sustains life, energy, and understanding is unseen, yet reliable, and this invisibility is not threatening, but comforting, because it illustrates that support and progress can exist quietly, without demanding attention or overt action. And as we contemplate the wave function itself, which allows particles to exist in superposition and tunnel across barriers, we recognize that reality is layered, probabilistic, and interconnected, and that what appears impossible from one perspective may simply require a shift in awareness, approach, or perception, and this shift encourages mental flexibility, patience, and calm, allowing the mind to release rigidity, embrace possibility, and trust in the natural unfolding of events. And within tunneling, the concepts of time, space, and energy blend in subtle, almost imperceptible ways, as particles traverse distances, interact with barriers, and influence outcomes in manners that are both constrained and free, guided yet unpredictable. And this interplay mirrors the flow of thought and consciousness, where solutions, insights, and understanding can arise through pathways that are quiet, patient, and unseen, yet perfectly consistent with underlying laws. And as we imagine electrons tunneling in semiconductors, enabling current to flow through circuits, we sense that even our modern, technological world relies on these delicate, improbable processes, and this awareness provides a gentle grounding, connecting the invisible quantum rhythm with the visible, tangible outcomes of daily life, reinforcing the idea that subtle, patient processes are often more powerful and reliable than forceful action. And as we drift further into visualization, imagining particles slowly, quietly tunneling through barriers across vast regions of space, across stars, planets, and clouds of interstellar gas, we recognize a universe that is patient, resourceful, and capable of maintaining balance and continuity, even when individual pathways seem unlikely or constrained. And this recognition encourages a mental state of relaxation, trust, and surrender, where effort is gentle, awareness is calm, and the mind can move fluidly along paths of least resistance, embracing the possibility that solutions, movement, and change can occur without struggle, tension, or force. And as we consider tunneling in biological contexts, where enzymes, electrons, and molecules navigate energy landscapes with probabilistic efficiency, we see that life itself, in its quiet, persistent, and astonishing complexity, depends on these improbable journeys, and this observation fosters wonder, calm, and reflective awe, because the extraordinary emerges continuously from subtle, quiet mechanisms that operate beneath conscious observation. And as tunneling continues to inspire research in quantum computing, fusion, and chemistry, we sense that the universe, at its most fundamental level, offers pathways through apparent impossibility, models for patience, and assurance that change, progression, and connection are always possible when guided by persistent, coherent principles. And as awareness drifts through this vision, observing barriers crossed without force, particles moving through walls, probabilities resolving into reality, the mind can follow gently, settling into rhythm, releasing urgency, and embracing the quiet, patient flow of the cosmos. And ultimately, quantum tunneling provides both a scientific explanation and a meditative model, demonstrating that the universe is both flexible and reliable, improbable yet precise, dynamic yet calm, offering a continuous, expansive, and gentle landscape for the imagination, reflection, and deep, unhurried rest, night after night, across space, time, and possibility, a cosmic lullaby of persistence, subtlety, and serene progression. At the edge where quantum physics and classical physics intersect, the universe exhibits a fascinating duality, a subtle transition zone in which the unpredictable, probabilistic world of particles gradually gives way to the familiar, deterministic behavior of everyday objects. And in this liminal space, we find that phenomena behave neither fully like a quantum entity, nor entirely like a classical object, instead existing in a delicate, nuanced overlap that challenges intuition while offering a profound sense of continuity and connection. And as we imagine a particle gradually increasing in size, energy, or complexity, moving from a single atom to a molecule to a macroscopic object, we notice that quantum effects such as superposition, tunneling, and entanglement persist subtly at first, but gradually diminish as interactions with the surrounding environment increase, a process often described as decoherence, where the precise, probabilistic wave function begins to merge with the statistical averages of classical physics, and this merging is not violent or abrupt, but gradual, like a river flowing into a calm lake, the waters blending seamlessly. And this visualization is inherently soothing, because it demonstrates that transitions, whether in physics or in thought, can unfold gently, allowing change without disruption. And as we extend this understanding to larger systems, we recognize that the boundary between quantum and classical is not a sharp line, but a gradient, a spectrum of behavior, in which uncertainty diminishes, predictability increases. Yet subtle quantum fingerprints remain, whispering beneath the apparent solidity of the world. And this whisper is calming, because it suggests that mystery, potential, and subtlety coexist naturally with order, structure, and reliability, allowing the mind to relax in the presence of both known and unknown, certain and uncertain, visible and invisible. And as we imagine Schrödinger's cat, poised at the threshold between life and death, quantum superposition and classical observation, we sense that reality itself is a continuous unfolding, a layered experience in which perception, interaction, and context shape outcomes gently rather than forcing abrupt resolution. And this layered unfolding mirrors consciousness, where thoughts, emotions, and awareness exist in overlapping states, sometimes uncertain, sometimes resolved, yet always interconnected within a larger coherent system. And as we consider quantum decoherence in macroscopic objects, where the interactions of countless particles gradually suppress superpositions, giving rise to classical predictability, we perceive a process that is patient, continuous, and subtle, illustrating that apparent rigidity emerges naturally from the cumulative effect of countless small, quiet actions. And this observation is profoundly comforting, because it models how stability, order, and predictability in life can arise without force, urgency, or struggle, flowing instead from the gentle accumulation of small influences over time. And as we explore experiments with mesoscopic systems, superconducting circuits, and cold atoms, where quantum behavior persists on scales larger than individual particles, we notice that the quantum, classical boundary can be probed, observed, and even manipulated, yet always with delicate care, because too much interaction with the environment collapses quantum effects, reinforcing the idea that subtlety, patience, and careful attention are essential for preserving possibility and potential. And this principle extends naturally to mental states, where awareness, curiosity, and reflection can nurture growth and insight without overexertion, pressure, or immediate resolution. And as we imagine a wave function gradually interacting with an environment of countless particles, photons, and fields, the collapse of quantum uncertainty into classical certainty is not abrupt but continuous, a gentle blending of probabilities into statistical patterns, and this blending is reassuring, because it demonstrates that even dramatic change can be absorbed, moderated, and integrated without chaos. And as the wave function of a quantum particle interacts with measuring devices, observers, or external fields, producing outcomes consistent with classical expectations, we perceive that observation itself is a form of gentle influence, not a violent imposition, illustrating that interaction, feedback, and attention can shape reality without force. And this model translates elegantly to human experience, showing that awareness, guidance, and subtle interventions can produce clarity, stability, and alignment without coercion or disruption. And within this boundary zone, phenomena such as quantum entanglement, superposition, and tunneling still leave traces, hints, and echoes, reminding us that beneath the surface of certainty and predictability lies a rich, subtle, interconnected domain where possibility, potential, and variation persist quietly. And this reminder is soothing, because it suggests that the universe is not rigidly deterministic, but allows room for flexibility, emergence, and gentle surprise, a space where mind, matter, and imagination can coexist harmoniously. And as we contemplate macroscopic quantum phenomena, such as superconductivity, Bose-Einstein condensates, or quantum interference in large molecules, we notice that the boundary itself is malleable, shaped by temperature, environment, scale, and interaction. And this malleability is comforting, because it models adaptability, resilience, and the possibility that subtle adjustments in context can preserve coherence, potential, and harmonious motion, whether in physics, thought, or daily life. And as we imagine an electron, a photon, or even a complex molecule existing in a superposition of states at this boundary, we perceive a universe in which uncertainty does not equate to chaos, and where possibilities can coexist without conflict, a profound metaphor for mental calm, emotional balance, and reflective awareness. And as decoherence gradually transforms these superpositions into classical certainty, we sense a rhythm, a gentle, continuous unfolding, a flowing transition from potential to actuality, from subtlety to solidity, from invisible motion to perceptible outcome. And this rhythm mirrors the way consciousness, attention, and intention crystallize thought into action without strain, coercion, or abruptness, allowing the mind to move fluidly between states of awareness, reflection, and calm. And as we expand this understanding to the scale of entire systems, we see that the interplay between quantum uncertainty and classical determinism governs not only atomic or molecular behavior, but also the foundation of chemistry, biology, electronics, and even macroscopic processes in nature. And this realization is deeply reassuring, because it reveals a universe in which both unpredictability and stability coexist, each supporting the other. And as we imagine drifting through this quantum, classical interface, visualizing particles, waves, molecules, and objects moving seamlessly along the continuum, we experience a sense of balance, continuity, and gentle rhythm. A meditative cadence in which uncertainty gradually resolves into predictability, subtlety integrates into clarity, and potential manifests as realized motion. And this meditative awareness encourages the mind to relax, to let thoughts flow, to release control, and to trust in the natural unfolding of processes, whether physical, mental, or emotional. And within this boundary, every observation, interaction, and motion contributes to the larger structure, reinforcing that even in transition zones, order, coherence, and harmony prevail, a comforting model for life, rest, and reflection. And as we float through this delicate interface, the universe appears not as a rigid machine, nor a chaotic void, but as a vast, patient, interconnected system, where the mysterious rules of the quantum domain gradually merge with the familiar certainties of classical existence, producing stability, rhythm, and gentle guidance. And this vision, carried into awareness, encourages calm, patience, curiosity, and trust, allowing consciousness to drift, observe, and rest within the quiet, persistent, and harmonious flow of the cosmos, night after night, across scales of space, time, and reality itself, a lullaby of transition, balance, and serene continuity. In the enigmatic thought experiment known as Schrödinger's cat, we encounter a bridge between the quantum world and human perception, a scenario where a cat, enclosed in a box with a quantum-triggered mechanism, exists simultaneously in states of life and death until observed, and this paradox, though abstract, provides a gentle lens through which to explore the delicate interplay between observation, uncertainty, and reality, because it invites the mind to dwell not in fear or urgency, but in patient contemplation of possibilities, imagining the cat suspended in a quiet, invisible superposition, where existence itself is a fluid, unfolding phenomenon, and as we picture the box resting silently in a room, undisturbed, the cat neither moves nor disappears, yet simultaneously embodies multiple potentialities, a quiet reminder that the universe can contain ambiguity without chaos, and that the absence of observation does not negate reality, but allows it to exist in subtle, layered forms. And this subtlety is inherently calming, because it mirrors the gentle uncertainty of thought, where ideas, emotions, and impressions coexist before crystallization into conscious awareness. And as we consider the mechanism within the box, a vial of poison connected to the random decay of a radioactive atom, we notice that the system functions quietly, unpredictably, yet within strict laws of physics, and this interplay between randomness and order suggests a universe in which possibility is embraced without threat, where patterns emerge from chance through consistent principles, a comforting model for both natural and mental processes. And within this framework, the act of opening the box represents not merely observation, but the gentle transition from potential to actuality, from ambiguity to clarity, from quantum superposition to classical certainty. And this transition is not violent or sudden, but gradual in conceptual understanding, inviting reflection, patience, and acceptance, because even in the collapse of possibilities, the system maintains continuity, structure, and coherence. And as we imagine peering into the box, sensing the quiet presence of the cat, a meditative awareness arises, one in which attention floats between potential states without urgency, gently tracing probabilities, outcomes, and subtle cues. And this awareness encourages mental calm, because it demonstrates that complexity, uncertainty, and multiplicity do not necessitate stress, conflict, or haste, but can coexist harmoniously within a structured system. And as we extend this contemplation, we realize that Schrödinger's cat is not merely about an actual feline, but a metaphor for the broader nature of reality, where countless phenomena, from subatomic particles to macroscopic systems, exist in overlapping, interdependent, and probabilistic states, and the mind, too, operates in such a layered fashion, balancing thoughts, emotions, and sensory input in a continuous, subtle orchestration. And recognizing this analogy encourages patience, because it illustrates that clarity, insight, and understanding emerge over time, through gentle interaction and observation, rather than forceful intervention. And within this mental model, the duality of life and death, presence and absence, certainty and uncertainty, becomes a source of curiosity and reflection rather than fear, a quiet playground for imagination and insight. And as we imagine the box remaining closed, the cat suspended in its quantum ambiguity, the mind can rest in the realization that not all outcomes need immediate resolution, that processes can unfold slowly, predictably, and harmlessly, and that the universe accommodates multiple possibilities simultaneously, offering a sense of freedom and spaciousness. And as we consider the broader implications of this thought experiment for consciousness, observation, and reality itself, we notice that the collapse of the wave function, when an observer finally measures the system, does not destroy potential but integrates it into a coherent, experienced state, demonstrating that change and resolution can occur gently, harmoniously, and without disruption, and this understanding is profoundly reassuring, because it provides a model for life, cognition, and awareness, showing that uncertainty is not disorder, and that the interplay of possibilities leads naturally to stability and clarity, much like the quiet unfolding of sleep, reflection, or meditation. And as we imagine repeating this process across countless systems in the universe, where superpositions exist until observation, decoherence gradually shapes outcomes, and interactions accumulate subtly over time, we sense a cosmic rhythm, a slow, persistent flow in which quantum ambiguity gently merges with classical determinacy, creating an enduring, reliable structure. And this rhythm encourages mental stillness, because it mirrors the way thoughts, feelings, and experiences can integrate naturally without force, pressure, or urgency. And as we extend our attention to the cat itself, suspended in superposition yet quietly present, we recognize a metaphor for the self, a conscious observer navigating a world of uncertainty, possibility, and interconnection, where awareness gently collapses ambiguity into understanding, choice, and experience. And this recognition fosters empathy, introspection, and calm, because it demonstrates that observation, attention, and presence need not be aggressive or hurried, but can guide gently, integrating multiple potentialities into coherent experience. And within this frame, life itself can be seen as a continuous interplay between latent possibility and realized outcome, between subtle quantum ambiguity and structured classical reality, a balance that sustains coherence, order, and gentle motion across scales of existence. And as we imagine the cat, the box, the quantum atom, and the observer as a single interconnected system, we sense the delicate dance of causality, probability, and observation, a rhythm in which every component contributes without overwhelming. And this interconnectedness mirrors the structure of thought, emotion, and awareness, showing that calm, reflective presence can navigate uncertainty without fear, judgment, or haste. And as we dwell in this contemplation, letting the image of Schrodinger's cat float in consciousness, suspended between potential and actuality, we feel a profound sense of reassurance, spaciousness, and patience, realizing that ambiguity is natural, resolution is gradual, and observation itself is a gentle, stabilizing act. And as this awareness deepens, it provides a meditative model for mental rest, for reflective attention, and for the integration of experience over time, offering a quiet rhythm in which uncertainty, possibility, and coherence coexist harmoniously. And in this rhythm, we find the foundation for deep, restorative calm, a slow, continuous lullaby of potential becoming reality, of possibility resolving into experience, of life itself unfolding gently across the universe, night after night, across scales both microscopic and cosmic, a serene embrace of the mysterious, the subtle, and the quietly enduring quantum entanglement, often described as the mysterious link between particles separated by vast distances, invites us into a universe where connectivity transcends space, where two particles, once interacting, continue to influence each other instantaneously regardless of separation. And this phenomenon, though counterintuitive, provides a profound metaphor for subtle, unseen connections that underlie both physical and mental systems, because it demonstrates that relationships can exist beyond immediate perception, that influence can operate silently yet persistently, and that coherence does not require proximity or force. And as we imagine two entangled particles, one perhaps on Earth and the other light years away, each measurement of one instantly shapes the state of the other, we sense a web of interconnectedness that is both invisible and reliable, a gentle, persistent guidance that mirrors the way thoughts, emotions, and intentions ripple through consciousness, subtly affecting perception and behavior. And this invisible coherence is calming, because it reassures the mind that order and communication exist, even where nothing seems apparent. that patterns are maintained even in apparent isolation, and that the universe itself is quietly woven into a continuous, coherent fabric, where nothing is truly disconnected. And as we consider the nature of entanglement, we notice that measurement collapses uncertainty for both particles, aligning them into correlated outcomes. And this subtle synchronization is not violent or abrupt, but seamless, demonstrating that influence can be instantaneous yet gentle, subtle yet profound. And this realization provides a model for how awareness, observation, and connection operate in our mental and emotional lives, showing that even subtle, unseen processes can guide outcomes and preserve harmony. And as we imagine countless particles throughout the cosmos becoming entangled over time, forming invisible networks that connect the minutiae of matter into coherent structures, we begin to perceive a universe that is not chaotic or fragmented, but structured, organized, and delicately interdependent. And this perception encourages mental calm, because it mirrors the mind's capacity to integrate experiences, thoughts, and emotions into cohesive patterns without conscious effort, allowing the awareness of connection to arise without urgency or control. And as we visualize entangled particles drifting through space, each pair maintaining a quiet correspondence regardless of distance, we sense a rhythm of interaction that is both stable and subtle, a gentle pulse of correlation that exists beyond sight or sound. And this rhythm provides reassurance, because it shows that the universe operates with an inherent consistency, that unseen influences are real, and that systems can function harmoniously, even without immediate observation or interference. And as we extend this visualization to include human life, relationships, and consciousness, the metaphor of entanglement becomes even more profound, suggesting that invisible bonds connect people, thoughts, and events across time and space, that subtle interactions shape outcomes quietly, and that coherence emerges naturally from these connections without force. And this understanding is soothing, because it illustrates that influence, guidance, and support often operate beneath awareness, quietly stabilizing systems, nurturing balance, and integrating experience. And as we reflect on experiments showing entanglement at macroscopic scales, where particles remain correlated even across kilometers, or through challenging environments, we appreciate the resilience and persistence of invisible connections. And this persistence reassures the mind that stability, coherence, and integration are fundamental features of reality, not fragile or temporary. And as we imagine entangled photons, electrons, or atoms communicating instantaneously across empty space, a sense of wonder arises, not sharp or demanding, but soft, expansive, and contemplative, drawing attention to the delicate, elegant structures that sustain existence. And this gentle awe promotes reflective calm, because it engages curiosity without urgency, inviting observation, imagination, and mindfulness. And as we consider the implications of entanglement for quantum information, teleportation, and computation, we recognize that the universe permits profound coordination, collaboration, and transmission of influence even in the absence of classical connection. And this allowance illustrates that potential, coherence, and order can operate invisibly, reliably, and without pressure, a model that resonates with deep relaxation and meditative awareness. And as we expand our awareness to encompass the vast networks of entangled particles that might exist across the cosmos, linking stars, gas clouds, planets, and fundamental particles into an unbroken web of subtle correlation, we perceive a universe that is alive with connection, a continuous fabric of mutual influence that, though unseen, is both powerful and harmonious. And this perception fosters mental stillness, because it demonstrates that order can be maintained without force, that balance can arise naturally from interdependence, and that even the smallest elements contribute to the coherence of the whole, quietly, persistently, and without demand. And as we imagine drifting alongside these entangled networks, tracing invisible threads that link distant particles, we sense a rhythm of cosmic coordination, a gentle pulse of synchronization that encourages surrender, reflection, and trust in the quiet principles that govern existence. And this rhythm mirrors the slow, restorative processes of sleep, meditation, and deep awareness, providing a model for mental integration, coherence, and calm. And as we consider that entanglement operates without attenuation over distance, unaffected by separation or apparent barriers, we recognize a profound lesson about resilience, continuity, and invisible support, illustrating that connection and guidance can persist even where they are not directly observed. And this lesson resonates deeply with the human need for trust, patience, and the reassurance that essential support exists, even in the absence of immediate perception. And as we imagine the universe humming with entangled links, each particle paired with another, each connection silent yet certain, each interaction integrated into a vast, stable network, a sense of expansiveness emerges, allowing the mind to drift into contemplative calm, untroubled by urgency, anchored by invisible rhythms, and guided by principles of coherence, correlation, and subtle influence. And within this expansive awareness, we sense a continuity that transcends time, space, and scale, offering reassurance that even amidst apparent isolation or uncertainty, the cosmos maintains structure, balance, and gentle, persistent guidance. And this continuity provides a model for deep mental rest, showing that awareness, intention, and observation can integrate experience naturally, harmoniously, and without strain. And as we allow these thoughts to permeate, imagining entangled particles, invisible networks, and the quiet, pervasive influence of correlation across the universe, the mind settles, finding space to release control, drift in observation, and rest in recognition of the deep, subtle, and enduring interconnections that underpin reality, offering a cosmic lullaby of unity, coherence, and serene connection. The boundary between quantum physics and classical physics is not a sharp line but a gradual transition, a subtle interface where the strange, probabilistic, and counterintuitive rules of the quantum world give way to the predictable, deterministic, and familiar behavior of everyday objects. And as we consider this boundary, we begin to appreciate a universe that is layered, where phenomena operate differently depending on scale, context, and observation, and this layered nature mirrors the mind itself, which contains both subtle, subconscious processes and overt, conscious actions, working simultaneously yet according to different principles. And as particles in the quantum realm exhibit superposition, existing in multiple states at once, we notice that these states collapse into singular outcomes when observed, or when interacting with larger systems, a process known as decoherence. And this collapse, though mathematically precise, occurs seamlessly, without abrupt violence, illustrating that transitions between uncertainty and clarity, ambiguity and order, can occur gently, smoothly, and predictably. And this realization provides a model for thought, perception, and daily experience, showing that even when uncertainty or complexity is present, outcomes eventually resolve naturally without force. And as we observe the way quantum fluctuations manifest in microscopic systems, yet rarely disturb macroscopic objects, we sense a protective buffering, a kind of natural insulation that allows large systems, planets, oceans, living beings, and galaxies to operate reliably despite the strange, unpredictable behavior at smaller scales. And this protective buffering is reassuring, because it demonstrates that stability can coexist with underlying complexity. That chaos at one level does not necessarily translate into disruption at another, and that subtle, unseen forces can operate without disturbing conscious experience. And as we imagine a world where atoms, electrons, and photons behave according to quantum rules, yet tables, trees, and humans follow classical trajectories, we perceive a universe that is balanced, where extremes are integrated harmoniously, and this harmony mirrors the mental state we seek in sleep or meditation, where unconscious processes, emotions, and thoughts flow beneath awareness, yet conscious cognition remains calm, coherent, and functional. And as we trace the boundary between these regimes further, we notice that the emergence of classical behavior is gradual, influenced by interactions, environmental factors, and collective effects, showing that order arises naturally from the aggregation of many uncertain elements. And this insight is soothing, because it reassures the mind that clarity, understanding, and stability are emergent, developing through time and interaction, rather than through immediate effort or control. And as we consider decoherence in biological systems, where quantum effects may subtly influence processes like photosynthesis, enzymatic reactions, or even neural dynamics, we glimpse the pervasive yet gentle influence of the quantum world on daily life. And this subtle guidance is calming, because it suggests that unseen forces are shaping experience in supportive ways, operating continuously without demanding attention. And as we imagine ourselves walking through a sunlit forest, each step and each movement governed classically, yet underpinned by quantum uncertainty at microscopic scales, we perceive a universe that is coherent, integrated, and resilient, allowing vast systems to function reliably while embracing subtle variability beneath the surface. And this perception encourages mental ease, because it mirrors our capacity to integrate multiple layers of awareness, balancing conscious intention with subconscious processing, while allowing natural processes to unfold without effort or force. And as we reflect on the implications of the quantum, classical transition for technology, computation, and engineering, we notice that human designs often exploit both domains, using quantum phenomena for precision, communication, and sensitivity, yet relying on classical principles for stability, predictability, and control. And this duality illustrates that different rules can coexist effectively, reinforcing the mind's appreciation for layered complexity, integration, and subtle coordination. And as we expand this understanding to include everyday phenomena, light, heat, sound, movement, and the flow of matter, we recognize that the rules governing our familiar world emerge smoothly from the microscopic realm, yet operate independently in ways that feel natural, safe, and comprehensible. And this smooth emergence fosters a sense of trust, calm, and acceptance, because it illustrates that large systems are resilient, stable, and reliable even when built from unpredictable components. And as we visualize interactions at the quantum, classical boundary, particles collapsing into specific states, waves interfering and resolving into predictable patterns, and larger objects maintaining coherent trajectories, we sense a rhythm of emergence, an ongoing process of stabilization, ordering, and integration that mirrors the natural cycles of thought, emotion, and experience, allowing awareness to flow gently along predictable channels, while subtle fluctuations and variations enrich perception without threatening coherence. And this duality of stability and variability is soothing, because it reflects the balance of rest and activity, calmness and attention, order and creativity, essential for mental equilibrium. And as we extend this awareness into human experience, recognizing that decisions, habits, and behaviors emerge from a complex interplay of conscious thought, subconscious influence, and external environment, we find parallels with the quantum, classical transition, where clarity and predictability arise naturally from complex, underlying interactions. And this parallel reinforces trust in the natural unfolding of events, reducing anxiety, effort, and strain, allowing consciousness to relax, observe, and integrate seamlessly. And as we imagine everyday life governed by these principles, where traffic flows, plants grow, bodies maintain equilibrium, and technology operates reliably, all emerging from microscopic uncertainty without abrupt failure, we perceive a cosmos of layered resilience, where each level supports the next, and where gentle coherence arises from the aggregation of countless minute interactions. And this vision provides profound reassurance, because it shows that the universe, in all its scales and manifestations, functions harmoniously, continuously, and patiently, without sudden disruption. And as we contemplate the slow accumulation of classical order from quantum ambiguity, the mind begins to align with this rhythm, tracing the flow from potentiality to actuality, from uncertainty to stability, from fluctuation to coherence, and this alignment encourages mental rest, calm reflection, and deep contemplation, allowing thought to drift without strain, emotion to settle without suppression, and awareness to float gently within a structured, yet subtle environment. And as we integrate these reflections, we perceive that the boundary between quantum and classical is not a point of fear, confusion, or tension, but a serene interface, a gentle transition that demonstrates how complexity, uncertainty, and variability can give rise to reliability, continuity, and harmony. And this insight mirrors the principles of sleep, meditation, and deep mental restoration, where processes operate unseen, quietly, and continuously to maintain coherence, balance, and readiness. And as we imagine drifting along this boundary, observing microscopic uncertainty resolving into macroscopic order, we sense a slow, pervasive rhythm, a cosmic cadence that mirrors the body's circadian cycles, the brain's natural oscillations, and the gradual integration of experience over time. And this rhythm is soothing, inviting the mind to release tension, settle into observation, and float within a framework of natural, effortless stability. And ultimately, the quantum, classical transition provides a model for understanding, resting, and experiencing the universe, a layered, resilient, harmonious system in which uncertainty, variability, and subtle influence coexist seamlessly with predictability, structure, and calm, offering a gentle, enduring lullaby for consciousness, thought, and the imagination, guiding the mind into profound, unhurried relaxation, night after night, across the scales of reality. From the tiniest particles to the familiar motions of daily life. Quantum entanglement, the phenomenon where particles become linked in such a way that the state of one instantaneously affects the state of another regardless of distance, presents one of the most profound intersections between the quantum and classical worlds. And as we contemplate this subtle, yet powerful connection, we realize that the universe operates with layers of interdependence, where distant elements communicate and influence each other without direct contact, a concept that mirrors the human experience of connection, intuition, and unseen influence. And as pairs of entangled particles maintain their correlation across light years, we begin to appreciate the persistence of relationships, dependencies, and interactions that are invisible yet deeply consequential. And this understanding fosters a gentle reassurance, because it demonstrates that even when forces are not immediately perceptible, their effects are real, reliable, and harmonized with broader patterns. And as we imagine a single entangled electron here on Earth, linked to its counterpart in a distant star system, we perceive a subtle web of influence that stretches across space and time, suggesting that distance does not diminish connection, and that coherence can exist beyond the visible, measurable, or tangible. And this perception parallels the restful mind, in which subconscious processes, memories, and intentions interact seamlessly with conscious thought, forming a balanced, coordinated system where each component contributes quietly to overall function. And as we consider the way entanglement challenges classical notions of separateness, locality, and independent causality, we begin to see that reality is more interconnected than daily experience might suggest, and that influence, effect, and correlation can operate at levels and scales beyond immediate perception, a realization that is deeply calming, because it expands perspective, reminding us that individual events, while seemingly isolated, participate in a larger, coherent web. And as scientists probe entanglement through experiments involving photons, electrons, and even small molecules, the results consistently confirm that correlations persist even when particles are separated by immense distances, and this consistency fosters trust in the reliability of natural processes, showing that coherence and harmony are not fragile or accidental, but intrinsic. And as we imagine entanglement within living systems, where biochemical reactions, neural firing, and even the flow of information at microscopic scales may reflect subtle quantum correlations, we sense that life itself is suffused with quiet interconnection, that unseen threads of influence guide outcomes gently, and this awareness encourages the mind to release the need for constant control, trusting that unseen processes operate reliably, even when imperceptible. And as we expand our perspective further, visualizing entangled networks stretching through atoms, molecules, stars, and perhaps entire regions of space, we begin to perceive a universe in which everything is subtly correlated, where even the smallest events resonate through larger systems. And this resonance provides a sense of stability, because it suggests that systems are interconnected yet balanced, that influence operates quietly without disruption, and that subtle interactions maintain cohesion across scales, much like deep sleep or meditation preserves mental integration while the conscious mind rests. And as we trace the paths of entangled particles, noticing that measurement, observation, and interaction affect their states, yet without causing instability, we are reminded that interaction does not require disruption, that relationships can exist, influence can be exerted, and change can occur gently, without chaos. And this mirrors human experience, where connection, empathy, and influence often operate invisibly, quietly shaping thought, mood, and behavior, and yet maintaining overall coherence, balance, and calm. And as we consider the implications of entanglement for information transmission, cryptography, and future quantum technologies, we notice that these systems rely on the precise, predictable maintenance of correlation across scales, a feature that reassures the mind, because it demonstrates that even highly sensitive, probabilistic systems can operate dependably when guided by consistent natural principles. And as we imagine entanglement influencing phenomena from particle physics to biology to cosmology, we begin to sense a continuous, pervasive network of connectivity that underpins reality, where each entity, no matter how small or distant, contributes to a dynamic yet harmonious whole. And this perception fosters reflective calm, because it illustrates that complexity, interaction, and uncertainty are integrated into stability, order, and coherence, without abrupt disturbance or threat. And as we extend this awareness to include human relationships, social systems, and ecological networks, we notice parallels, where distant events, subtle signals, and small influences ripple gently, shaping outcomes without immediate visibility, demonstrating that interconnectedness itself can be stabilizing, nurturing, and harmonious. And as we visualize our own place within this entangled cosmos, we feel embedded in a larger, subtle web of influence and support, where actions, intentions, and awareness are linked in ways beyond immediate comprehension, yet perfectly coherent. And this embedding is profoundly soothing, because it reassures that even when circumstances seem isolated or uncertain, we are part of a persistent, reliable, and interconnected system, capable of sustaining balance, nurturing growth, and supporting coherence. And as we consider entanglement on cosmic scales, where particles in distant galaxies may be subtly correlated with events here on Earth, the mind is invited to expand, to appreciate the vastness, subtlety, and coherence of reality. And this expansion fosters perspective, releasing the urgency, anxiety, and narrow focus of daily thought. And as we imagine drifting gently through this entangled universe, observing correlations across light years, sensing invisible connections threading through atoms, stars, and consciousness, we encounter a gentle rhythm, a silent cadence of interdependence, feedback, and subtle influence that mirrors the cycles of breathing, heartbeats, and neural oscillations. And this cadence encourages relaxation, trust, and surrender, because it shows that stability, influence, and coherence are maintained without force, without immediate intervention, and without disturbance. And as we extend this awareness to include mental processes, creativity, and perception, we recognize that subtle correlations operate continuously, guiding thoughts, emotions, and cognition along harmonious pathways, allowing consciousness to flow naturally, integrate experiences effortlessly, and rest deeply. And as we continue to explore this quantum, connected reality, observing entangled systems, gently maintaining coherence across scales, we feel reassured that even amidst apparent chaos, uncertainty, and separation, the universe operates through invisible networks of influence, persistent yet calm, subtle yet precise, and this realization is profoundly restorative, because it mirrors the conditions necessary for mental balance, restful awareness, and deep sleep, where subtle processes work silently in the background to maintain harmony, integration, and equilibrium, allowing consciousness to float freely, unburdened by immediate control, worry, or strain, and ultimately, quantum entanglement across scales offers a model for understanding, resting, and experiencing reality, a world in which distant influences, invisible connections, and subtle correlations operate continuously to sustain coherence, stability, and order, providing a cosmic lullaby for thought, consciousness, and perception, inviting the mind to drift gently, rest deeply, and sense the harmony and interconnectedness of the universe at every scale, night after night, across space, time, and the infinite rhythms of existence. Decoherence, the process by which quantum systems lose their delicate superpositions and begin to behave according to classical physics, represents one of the most subtle yet profound boundaries between the quantum and macroscopic worlds, and as we explore this phenomenon, we recognize that the universe operates through layers of interaction, where isolated potentialities gradually integrate with larger environments, and this integration is not abrupt or violent, but gentle, incremental, and persistent, allowing quantum systems to transition into classical behavior without disruption. And as particles interact with surrounding matter, radiation, and fields, their coherent quantum states entangle with innumerable external factors, creating a diffuse web of correlations that gradually diminishes the visibility of pure quantum effects. And this gradual blending mirrors the way thoughts, sensations, and emotions merge with conscious awareness, slowly shaping experience without forcing abrupt changes. And as we imagine a single electron or photon, initially existing in a delicate superposition, evolving imperceptibly through interaction with its environment, we perceive a process of natural assimilation, where potential possibilities are transformed into observed reality. And this assimilation fosters calm understanding, because it demonstrates that change and emergence occur smoothly, following consistent principles, without sudden shocks or chaos. And as decoherence extends to larger systems, including atoms, molecules, and even small biological structures, the cumulative effect of countless minor interactions produces classical stability, suggesting that order and predictability arise naturally from continuous, subtle influences. And this insight is deeply reassuring, because it shows that complexity and stability coexist harmoniously, that the macroscopic world does not emerge violently from the quantum, but through a patient, persistent, and silent orchestration. And as we consider this transition in the context of human perception, cognition, and experience, we realize that our own awareness operates similarly, integrating countless subtle inputs from neurons, senses, and the environment, translating them into coherent, continuous experience. And this parallel between quantum decoherence and mental integration offers a metaphor for calm observation, reflective awareness, and the gentle merging of ideas and sensations. And as we imagine observing a macroscopic object, like a leaf or a cup, we can trace its existence back through countless quantum interactions that, over time, decohered into the stability we perceive. And this tracing invites a sense of wonder, patience, and trust, because it demonstrates that reality emerges seamlessly from the interplay of potentiality and interaction, without the need for abrupt action, control, or interference. And as we expand this visualization to complex systems, such as planets, stars, and galaxies, we notice that decoherence-like processes occur at every level, where individual quantum events contribute quietly to the coherent behavior of macroscopic entities. And this layered emergence offers a sense of continuity and rhythm, suggesting that large systems are maintained through persistent, subtle interactions that are reliable, predictable, and stable. And as we reflect on these vast, Scale processes. A profound calm emerges, because it demonstrates that even immense complexity can be organized naturally, without external imposition or sudden disruption. And this calm mirrors the deep rest of sleep, where countless physiological and neurological processes unfold beneath awareness, maintaining coherence and stability without disturbance, allowing consciousness to drift freely, regenerate, and integrate experience. And as we imagine the gradual decoherence of quantum superpositions in everyday life, from photons interacting with air molecules to electrons entangling with larger fields, we perceive a universe of soft transitions, gentle assimilation, and persistent integration, a universe in which emergence and observation are inseparable, yet non-threatening, and this perception encourages reflective stillness, because it shows that the apparent solidity and predictability of the macroscopic world is not imposed forcefully, but arises naturally from the patient accumulation of countless minor influences, each contributing subtly to the whole. And as we contemplate these countless interactions, we recognize that decoherence itself is a stabilizing force, ensuring that order emerges from potential without abrupt collapse, allowing quantum possibilities to be expressed safely, coherently, and harmoniously. And this understanding fosters trust, patience, and a sense of security, because it demonstrates that the universe operates reliably, gently integrating components into stable outcomes, much as the body, mind, and environment interact seamlessly to produce experience, awareness, and rest. And as we extend this reflection to technological systems, from quantum computers to sensors and communication devices, we notice that decoherence presents both a challenge and a guide, showing that subtle environmental interactions can alter potential, yet can also be harnessed to produce desired outcomes, teaching that careful awareness, gentle guidance, and patient observation allow complex systems to function optimally without force or disruption. And as we visualize the intricate balance between coherent quantum states and the classical stability that emerges through decoherence, we begin to see patterns of integration, flow, and adaptation that extend across scales, from subatomic particles to stars, galaxies, and perhaps consciousness itself. And this pattern fosters a sense of embeddedness, connection, and reassurance, because it illustrates that systems are naturally self-regulating, harmonized, and capable of maintaining coherence, even amidst countless interactions. And as we imagine drifting through this continuum, observing particles gradually losing coherence, systems stabilizing, and the classical world emerging gently from the quantum, a meditative rhythm arises, one that mirrors breathing, circulation, and neural oscillation, offering a model for calm awareness, deep rest, and reflective observation. And as we expand further, seeing the implications of decoherence for life, evolution, and cosmology, we sense that emergence, change, and stability coexist, that potential becomes reality gradually, subtly, and reliably, and that the universe as a whole operates as a patient, enduring, and harmonious system, supporting both the delicate quantum underpinnings and the observable classical phenomena. And this realization encourages surrender, mental ease, and restful perspective, showing that integration, coherence, and stability do not require force, abruptness, or vigilance, and that even within immense complexity, subtle processes maintain order naturally, allowing consciousness, awareness, and experience to unfold smoothly, gently, and safely. And as we allow this awareness to settle within the mind, a profound sense of calm emerges, resonating with the slow, measured, and continuous flow of natural processes, both quantum and classical. And this resonance mirrors the conditions for restorative sleep, deep contemplation, and reflective stillness, where integration occurs quietly in the background, and awareness drifts along gentle rhythms of coherence, structure, and balance, ultimately revealing that decoherence, rather than being a threat or loss, is a model for calm emergence, patient integration, and enduring stability, inviting consciousness to relax, observe, and drift freely through the layers of reality, night after night, across scales both microscopic and cosmic, wrapped in the universe's steady, harmonious, and unhurried embrace. Quantum tunneling, a phenomenon where particles traverse energy barriers that would be insurmountable according to classical physics, reveals one of the most astonishing and subtle behaviors at the boundary between the quantum and macroscopic worlds. And as we contemplate this phenomenon, we realize that the universe allows motion, change, and transition in ways that defy ordinary intuition, showing that what seems impossible is often simply improbable. And yet, probability in the quantum realm is a natural guide rather than a source of chaos, because tunneling occurs within well-defined rules, governed by the Schrödinger equation, boundary conditions, and energy distributions. And as we imagine a single electron approaching a barrier higher than its kinetic energy, we observe that, rather than being strictly reflected, it has a finite chance to appear on the other side, a subtle miracle of probabilistic emergence. And this emergence is gentle, instantaneous, and unassuming, suggesting that change and progress do not always require brute force, but can happen through patience, probability, and persistence. And as tunneling scales up to influence atomic nuclei, chemical reactions, and even stellar processes, we notice that the effect, though invisible to direct observation, plays a critical role in the unfolding of the universe, from nuclear fusion in stars to the stability of matter, offering a quiet, pervasive form of guidance and connectivity. And this pervasive influence encourages a meditative reflection, because it demonstrates that power and effect need not be aggressive or obvious to be transformative. And as we imagine countless particles throughout the cosmos navigating barriers, appearing on the other side through probabilistic tunneling, a sense of fluidity and possibility emerges, illustrating that even seemingly rigid boundaries can be permeable under subtle, consistent principles. And this perception fosters calm, because it reassures the mind that constraints, whether physical or psychological, are not absolute, and that gentle, patient pathways exist to traverse difficulties without conflict or force. And as we extend this idea to biological systems, we observe that tunneling underlies essential phenomena, from enzyme activity to proton transfer in DNA, revealing that life itself depends on these delicate, improbable events, and that even the smallest motions can have enormous cumulative significance, offering a metaphor for human action, patience, and influence, where small, persistent, and unseen contributions shape larger outcomes without abruptness or visible struggle. And as we consider tunneling in the context of technological applications, from quantum computing to electron microscopy and nuclear decay, we recognize that this principle enables manipulation and control at scales inaccessible to classical means, demonstrating that subtle understanding of probability, potential, and boundary conditions allows for powerful, yet calm and precise outcomes. And this realization translates naturally to the mind, showing that awareness, intention, and gentle guidance can create significant change without force, mirroring the probabilistic emergence seen in tunneling phenomena. And as we visualize a particle passing through a barrier, appearing smoothly on the other side, we perceive a rhythm of emergence, continuity, and subtle transition, a rhythm that mirrors breathing, blood flow, and neural firing, where motion occurs without abruptness, pressure, or disruption. And as tunneling extends to the nuclear scale, enabling fusion within stars despite electrostatic repulsion, we notice that vast energy, heat, and light emerge from countless tiny, probabilistic events, each individually improbable, yet collectively producing immense, sustained effects. And this scaling from microscopic improbability to macroscopic consequence offers reassurance, demonstrating that small, patient, and quiet contributions accumulate naturally to create order, energy, and life. And as we imagine stars forming, shining, and evolving thanks to these tiny quantum leaps, we sense the universe operating like a gentle, unhurried orchestra, where each player contributes according to consistent principles, producing harmony without haste, panic, or disorder. And this orchestral perspective encourages mental ease, because it shows that even immense energy, change, and complexity can arise from subtle, probabilistic mechanisms that operate patiently and predictably. And as we expand this awareness further to include tunneling in radioactive decay, which shapes planetary heat, geological processes, and elemental abundances, we perceive a vast web of gentle influence, where even unseen, improbable events have profound, reliable consequences, reinforcing the idea that subtle, persistent action is sufficient to produce meaningful outcomes. And this insight aligns with restorative sleep, meditation, and reflective thought, because it demonstrates that integration, repair, and transformation often occur quietly, gradually, and without overt control. And as we consider artificial systems, such as quantum dots, tunnel junctions, and scanning tunneling microscopes, we notice that tunneling allows observation, manipulation, and measurement without forceful intrusion, providing a model for gentle awareness and engagement, showing that subtle interaction can achieve precision, control, and insight without disturbance. And this lesson translates to human perception and consciousness, where patient attention, careful observation, and non-invasive influence allow understanding and transformation without strain or conflict. And as we visualize innumerable particles in the universe tunneling through energy barriers, from atomic scales to stellar cores, a cosmic rhythm emerges, a rhythm of possibility, emergence, and continuity, illustrating that what may seem impossible at one scale can unfold naturally at another. And this rhythm fosters calm, because it reassures that limits are often probabilistic rather than absolute, and that motion, change, and progress can occur within gentle, invisible, yet consistent laws. And as we imagine the cumulative effect of these countless quantum leaps, powering stars, sustaining life, and shaping matter, we recognize the universality of subtle influence, showing that persistence, probability, and patient interaction are sufficient to create coherence, energy, and structure across scales. And this recognition encourages mental stillness, reflective observation, and trust in natural processes, because it demonstrates that systems evolve, adapt, and emerge without force or urgency. And as our awareness drifts through this vast quantum landscape, observing tunneling at work in atoms, molecules, stars, and technology, we sense a gentle, pervasive harmony, a continuous flow in which the improbable becomes inevitable through patience, accumulation, and subtle consistency. And this flow mirrors the desired rhythm of consciousness during rest, allowing the mind to release control, surrender to natural progression, and trust in underlying patterns. And ultimately, quantum tunneling provides not only a mechanism for physical emergence, but a metaphor for mental calm, resilience, and the gentle realization that barriers, however insurmountable they appear, may be crossed quietly, gradually, and naturally, and that the universe, through innumerable tiny possibilities integrated over time, produces continuity, energy, and life, creating a cosmic lullaby that nurtures observation, reflection, and deep, unhurried rest. Quantum entanglement, often described as spooky action at a distance, represents one of the most profound and mysterious phenomena at the boundary between classical and quantum physics, where two or more particles become linked in such a way that the state of one instantaneously influences the state of the other, regardless of the vast distances separating them. And as we contemplate this remarkable interconnectedness, we begin to sense that the universe operates not only through local, predictable interactions, but also through subtle, non-local correlations that tie distant elements together in a quiet, invisible web of influence. And this interconnectedness, though counterintuitive to human experience, provides a gentle reminder that isolation is often an illusion, that even seemingly distant events or entities are part of a larger, coherent system. And as entangled particles respond instantaneously to measurements performed on their partners, we perceive a universe where information and influence transcend ordinary spatial limitations, yet do so without disruption, force, or chaos, maintaining overall harmony. while defying linear expectations, and this paradoxical behavior encourages reflective calm, because it shows that complexity and interdependence can coexist with order, and that relationships, whether physical, emotional, or conceptual, can operate across great distances in ways that are subtle, reliable, and profound. And as we extend our imagination to the cosmic scale, considering stars, planets, and particles entangled across light years, we notice that entanglement does not violate causality, does not generate chaos, and yet establishes invisible connections that quietly shape correlations, a model for the unseen ties that link systems together in ways we may not directly perceive, but can infer through careful observation. And this insight resonates deeply with mental processes, illustrating that thoughts, emotions, and actions, though separated in time or context, are often connected by underlying structures and patterns that guide outcomes without force, urgency, or explicit visibility. And as entangled photons in laboratories demonstrate correlations stronger than classical physics predicts, appearing to communicate instantaneously, we realize that influence and coordination can occur without overt signals or aggressive intervention, a concept that fosters patience, trust, and acceptance, because it suggests that even unseen or subtle dynamics can maintain balance, coherence, and stability. And as entanglement underlies emerging technologies such as quantum cryptography, teleportation experiments, and quantum computing, we see that harnessing these invisible connections allows unprecedented precision, security, and insight, illustrating that understanding subtle links can yield enormous practical and conceptual benefits. And this translation from the invisible quantum world to observable outcomes mirrors how mindfulness, reflection, and quiet awareness allow human understanding to emerge from subtle, often unnoticed processes, supporting calm, clarity, and informed action. And as we imagine two entangled particles drifting in opposite directions across vast distances, yet remaining perfectly correlated, a sense of simultaneous unity and separation arises, illustrating that connection does not require proximity, and that distance does not diminish influence, a reassuring idea for both cosmic and psychological perspective. And this non-local harmony encourages the mind to rest, because it demonstrates that relationships, guidance, and coherence can exist beyond immediate perception, that order does not demand visibility, and that support can operate quietly, consistently, and reliably across apparent emptiness. And as we consider the role of entanglement in fundamental physics, from maintaining coherence in quantum systems to influencing phenomena like superconductivity and superfluidity, we notice that these connections, though microscopic, have far-reaching consequences, providing stability, continuity, and structure in ways that classical intuition could never predict. And this understanding fosters awe, calm, and humility, because it reminds us that reality often operates through mechanisms beyond our immediate comprehension, yet remains orderly, intelligible, and beautifully orchestrated. And as entanglement extends to thought experiments such as Schrödinger's cat and Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen paradox, we appreciate that the universe allows states of simultaneous possibility, where observation, measurement, and interaction gently collapse potentials into realized outcomes. And this gentle collapse is neither violent nor abrupt, but measured, probabilistic, and consistent, offering a model for mental processing, decision making, and reflective awareness, where potential ideas, emotions, or insights can exist in a flexible state, gradually resolving into clarity without force or urgency. And as we visualize vast networks of entangled particles throughout the cosmos, connecting matter, energy, and information in subtle ways, we sense a tapestry of gentle influence, a web of silent coordination, where each element participates in the whole without imposing disruption. And this perception fosters relaxation, because it mirrors the way thoughts and feelings can be integrated naturally, without conflict, producing coherence, balance, and stability. And as we extend this awareness to human relationships, consciousness, and even planetary systems, we notice that the principle of entanglement, offers a metaphor for interdependence, empathy, and subtle guidance, where actions, intentions, and energy ripple across networks in ways that are profound yet non-invasive, supporting harmony and continuity. And as entanglement experiments demonstrate violations of Bell's inequalities, confirming that local hidden variables cannot account for observed correlations, we realize that nature operates on principles far subtler than classical determinism, yet entirely consistent and reliable. And this realization encourages mental flexibility, openness, and trust, because it shows that the most effective, influential, and enduring connections often function invisibly, patiently, and without coercion. And as we imagine drifting through a universe of entangled particles, fields, and systems, sensing their quiet coordination across space and time, we recognize a profound model for rest, reflection, and awareness, where influence can be gentle, change can be subtle, and coherence can emerge without force. And this model mirrors the ideal state for meditation, sleep, and cognitive calm, where consciousness flows along invisible patterns, perceives connections without exertion, and rests in trust of underlying order. And as we let this image permeate, the notion of entanglement becomes more than a physical phenomenon, transforming into a meditation on relational existence, subtle causality, and pervasive connectivity, illustrating that balance, stability, and influence can operate across distances, through time, and between entities without aggression, visibility, or urgency. And this awareness, held in the mind, encourages surrender, calm, and reflective observation, guiding thought gently along the invisible threads that bind the universe together. And ultimately, quantum entanglement offers a cosmic lullaby, a quiet, invisible, yet persistent connection that integrates the smallest particle with the largest system, linking space, time, energy, and consciousness into a harmonious whole, inviting the mind to rest, drift, and observe, cradled by the universe's subtle, enduring, and unhurried embrace. Quantum decoherence represents one of the most fascinating phenomena at the boundary between the quantum and classical worlds. A subtle process through which the delicate superpositions of quantum systems, where particles can exist in multiple states simultaneously, gradually lose their coherence when interacting with their surrounding environment. And as we contemplate this transition, we notice that the universe provides a gentle filtering mechanism, allowing complex, unpredictable quantum behavior to settle into the predictable, orderly patterns we recognize in everyday experience. And this emergence of classical behavior from underlying quantum chaos is neither abrupt nor violent, but gradual, cumulative, and quiet, providing a model for understanding how stability, continuity, and predictability arise naturally from systems that at first glance appear unruly or counterintuitive. And as particles entangle with surrounding matter, fields, and radiation, their superpositions effectively collapse, not through sudden measurement or observer intervention, but through a slow, pervasive interaction with countless environmental factors. And this process, while microscopic and imperceptible, produces the familiar reality in which objects have defined positions, velocities, and properties, a reality that feels safe, coherent, and reassuring to consciousness. And as we extend this insight, we perceive that the classical world we inhabit, from the orbit of planets to the flow of rivers, emerges continuously from countless quantum interactions, and that the stability we experience is the result of an immense, subtle coordination of probabilistic events. And this realization fosters a sense of calm, because it shows that apparent order is not imposed externally, but arises naturally, spontaneously, and reliably from fundamental principles. And as decoherence spreads through a system, superpositions leak information into the environment, correlations accumulate, and the system becomes entangled with surroundings. Yet this entanglement does not produce chaos. Instead, it quietly guides the system toward behavior that conforms to the classical expectations, illustrating that even profound, complex interactions can yield smooth, stable outcomes. And this smooth emergence offers a metaphor for mental and emotional processes, showing how scattered, subtle, or seemingly contradictory experiences gradually integrate into coherent thoughts, feelings, and behaviors without force or urgency. And as we imagine a single particle within a noisy environment, interacting with photons, molecules, and fields, we notice that its quantum potentialities are progressively averaged into stable outcomes, a process that parallels the way reflection, patience, and time allow human experiences to settle into understanding, insight, and wisdom. And this natural settling reassures the mind that clarity emerges through gentle interaction, rather than coercion. That stability arises from subtle coordination, rather than abrupt intervention, and that chaos need not produce fear, because it eventually flows into order. And as decoherence scales up from individual particles to large ensembles, we see how macroscopic objects, tables, chairs, planets, stars, remain firmly anchored in classical reality, their quantum uncertainties diffused across innumerable interactions, a phenomenon that highlights the power of collective influence and gradual integration. And this scaling fosters a sense of perspective, reminding us that small, subtle events can shape large systems in ways that are continuous, reliable, and non-disruptive. And as we consider the temporal aspect of decoherence, we notice that these processes unfold over vast numbers of interactions, extending across time and space, yet they do so imperceptibly to human senses, creating stability without abrupt transition. And this slow, patient unfolding mirrors natural rhythms in life, encouraging reflection, calm observation, and trust in gradual processes, where time itself acts as a stabilizing force, allowing complexity to resolve naturally into coherence. And within this framework, the classical world is not separate from the quantum world, but is its emergent property, a peaceful surface formed atop a dynamic, probabilistic substrate. And this layered reality invites contemplation, suggesting that beneath apparent solidity and predictability lies a rich, subtle, and continuously active network of possibilities, connections, and interactions. And as we trace the influence of decoherence through everyday experience, how light behaves, how matter maintains form, how information propagates reliably, we perceive that stability is pervasive, continuous, and quiet, a reassurance that the universe operates with integrity, even amidst underlying uncertainty. And this awareness encourages mental relaxation, because it demonstrates that the mind, like physical systems, can integrate myriad subtle influences into coherent thought, calm emotion, and ordered perception, without force or urgency. And as decoherence is further studied in laboratories, from superconducting circuits to quantum computers, we realize that understanding and harnessing this process allows us to navigate the interface between uncertainty and certainty, between potential and reality, and that these insights illuminate not only physics, but the principles of balance, patience, and subtle guidance in broader contexts. And this perspective fosters trust, resilience, and calm, illustrating that complex, interconnected systems can evolve smoothly from chaos to order when principles are consistent, interactions are gentle, and time is allowed to unfold naturally. And as we visualize particles, fields, and waves in quiet, continuous interaction, gradually producing the tangible, observable world, we recognize a cosmic meditation. The universe itself demonstrates how patience, subtlety, and persistent interaction generate coherence, stability, and predictability. And this cosmic lesson translates to human experience, reminding us that thoughts, emotions, and actions integrate into understanding and calm through gentle, consistent influence rather than force. And as we imagine drifting through this layered reality, observing how quantum potentialities diffuse into classical stability, a profound sense of awe and reassurance emerges, because we sense that even the most subtle, hidden processes contribute harmoniously to the observable order, guiding particles, stars, and minds along paths that are reliable, predictable, and supportive. And this realization encourages surrender, reflection, and rest, showing that integration occurs naturally, that coherence is emergent, and that calm is inherent when interactions follow gentle, persistent patterns, and ultimately, quantum decoherence offers a model for understanding the emergence of stability, the harmony between potential and reality, and the natural rhythm of transformation, providing a meditative framework in which consciousness can observe, trust, and drift into deep, unhurried rest, cradled by the quiet, continuous, and unbroken flow of the universe, a lullaby of emergence, continuity, and cosmic calm. Quantum tunneling is a phenomenon that reveals the subtle, almost magical nature of the quantum world, where particles such as electrons, protons, and even larger atomic clusters occasionally traverse energy barriers that would be insurmountable according to classical physics. And as we contemplate this, we recognize that reality is not rigidly constrained by apparent obstacles, but is guided by probabilities, potentialities, and gentle fluctuations. And this notion offers a profoundly calming perspective, because it demonstrates that even when walls seem immovable, there exist paths of subtle influence that allow progress without force or confrontation. And as a particle approaches a barrier, it does not collide violently or attempt brute force. Instead, its wave function, a mathematical description of its probability distribution, extends slightly into forbidden regions, creating a non-zero likelihood that the particle can appear on the other side, a process that occurs silently, smoothly, and invisibly, illustrating that transition, change, and emergence can happen through subtle permeation rather than aggressive action. And this principle resonates deeply with human experience, suggesting that obstacles, resistance, and limitations may not require confrontation, but can be navigated through patience, timing, and alignment with underlying probabilities. And as we scale this idea from single particles to the broader universe, we notice that quantum tunneling is responsible for essential phenomena, such as nuclear fusion in stars, where hydrogen nuclei merge to form helium despite strong repulsive forces, a gentle yet persistent process that fuels the light and warmth of countless suns. And this cosmic tunneling underscores the power of subtlety, showing that even immense energy barriers can be crossed when guided by natural principles, slowly, steadily, and without abrupt disruption. And as we imagine these processes occurring within stellar cores, invisible yet fundamental, we sense that the universe operates through quiet persistence, where the most vital transformations are often unobserved, gradual, and consistent. And this awareness nurtures mental calm, because it suggests that essential change in life, thought, or emotion does not require struggle, force, or dramatic upheaval, but can emerge naturally when conditions align and probabilities are respected. And within the framework of quantum tunneling, time and energy interact in ways that defy classical expectation, allowing particles to effectively borrow energy for brief instants, traverse barriers, and appear on the other side, a subtle choreography that requires no external push, no coercion, and no hurry, illustrating that movement through restriction can be achieved gently, gracefully, and patiently. And as we expand this metaphor, we see that the classical obstacles we perceive in life, uncertainty, fear, limitation, can similarly be approached not by brute effort, but by aligning with subtle currents of opportunity, insight, and preparation, allowing passage to occur organically. And this recognition is deeply reassuring, because it transforms the perception of barriers from threatening walls into permeable regions of potential, spaces where patience, awareness, and subtle action produce results without struggle. And as quantum tunneling operates across scales, from electrons in semiconductors to alpha particles escaping atomic nuclei, it demonstrates that the same principle of gentle transition is valid universally, showing that fundamental laws guide systems toward possibilities without imposing force. And this universality encourages trust, because it illustrates that consistent patterns of influence, alignment, and probability can operate safely, predictably, and supportively even in complex systems. And as we consider technological applications, such as tunnel diodes, scanning tunneling microscopes, and quantum computing, we observe that humans have learned to harness this quiet, probabilistic flow to achieve precise, powerful outcomes without violent action. And this human scale mastery reflects the principle that subtlety, alignment, and awareness can produce extraordinary effects, fostering inspiration, patience, and measured effort. And as we trace the temporal dimension of tunneling, we notice that these events occur over incredibly brief intervals. Yet their consequences, nuclear fusion, particle transport, chemical reactions, unfold over long timescales, linking the ephemeral with the enduring, the instant with the eternal. And this connection encourages reflection, because it demonstrates that small, fleeting moments of alignment or opportunity can generate long-lasting, meaningful impact. And as we imagine a particle gently appearing on the other side of a barrier, unnoticed, undramatic, yet profoundly consequential, we sense that life, like the quantum world, may offer subtle pathways that bypass apparent obstacles, allowing progress without conflict, without stress, and without disruption. And this vision nurtures calm, because it aligns with the mind's need to release struggle, control, and urgency, trusting that processes can unfold naturally when conditions are favorable. And within this quantum framework, barriers are not absolute, they are probabilistic, permeable, and flexible, a model for understanding that boundaries in thought, emotion, and circumstance can be navigated through patience, awareness, and the gentle guidance of natural laws. And as we extend this understanding to cosmic scales, we see that tunneling enables the slow fusion of stars, the production of neutrinos, and the delicate interplay of matter and energy that sustains galaxies, illustrating that even across vast distances, immense energy, and immense complexity, subtle action produces profound outcomes. And this realization reinforces trust, calm, and patience, showing that change, creation, and progress need not be loud, forceful, or immediate to be effective. And as we visualize countless particles traversing barriers silently throughout the universe, a profound sense of interconnectedness emerges, because each particle, by following probabilistic paths, contributes to the structure, energy, and ongoing evolution of matter and life. And this quiet coordination offers a meditative reflection. Even what is unseen, brief, or subtle can maintain order, produce consequence, and support balance. And as we contemplate human experience alongside this cosmic model, we notice that moments of insight, adaptation, and gentle action often produce the most lasting, meaningful results, mirroring the tunneling process. And this parallel encourages mindful observation, patience, and trust in slow, subtle processes, suggesting that the mind, like the quantum world, can traverse obstacles and integrate possibilities without force or struggle. And as we drift along these thoughts, visualizing particles appearing on the far side of barriers, stars igniting from gentle fusion, and systems evolving through quiet, persistent influence, we are invited to rest, to release effort, and to trust in the steady rhythm of natural law. And ultimately, quantum tunneling becomes more than a physical process. It transforms into a meditative reflection on life, patience, and the gentle unfolding of potential, offering the mind a model of effortless transition, calm progression, and enduring stability, a cosmic lullaby of passage, subtle influence, and serene persistence. As quantum superposition is one of the most fascinating and mind-expanding principles of the microscopic world, where particles such as electrons, photons, and even larger quantum systems exist not in a single, definite state, but in a combination of multiple potential states simultaneously. And as we contemplate this, it invites a profound reflection on uncertainty, possibility, and the fluidity of existence, suggesting that reality, at its deepest level, is not rigid or singular, but a tapestry of overlapping potentials, each one subtly influencing the whole. And this awareness can be calming, because it demonstrates that the world, like thought and emotion, need not be fixed, forced, or constrained to a single outcome at any moment, but may gently contain multiple paths, options, and expressions, all coexisting until conditions resolve them, a concept that resonates deeply with human experience, where uncertainty, ambiguity, and possibility are ever present, and yet need not create panic or tension, because the very presence of multiple potentialities implies that flexibility, adaptation, and eventual resolution are natural, organic processes that unfold in their own time. And as we imagine a single electron in a superposed state, spinning clockwise and counterclockwise, located here and there simultaneously, we recognize that the very act of observation or measurement does not force the universe into rigidity, but allows one of the possibilities to manifest in experience, and this principle mirrors life's gentle unfolding, where observation, intention, or attention can guide outcomes without violent coercion. And as we scale this concept from the microscopic to the macroscopic, we begin to see that superposition offers a metaphor for mental, emotional, and even social flexibility, because within the mind, multiple perspectives, feelings, and potential actions can coexist without immediate resolution, offering richness, resilience, and the capacity for adaptation. And this coexistence, far from being chaotic, is inherently ordered, probabilistic, and harmonious, a system in which each potentiality contributes to the structure of reality, without demanding premature resolution. And as we expand our awareness to the cosmic scale, we notice that superposition plays a subtle role in the formation of matter, light, and energy, influencing how particles interact, how chemical bonds form, and how information travels through space, a gentle reminder that even the smallest, seemingly imperceptible possibilities shape the course of the universe. And this recognition is profoundly reassuring, because it suggests that unseen potential, quiet influence, and latent possibility can sustain and guide systems without force, allowing order, growth, and harmony to emerge naturally. And within human consciousness, superposition encourages a state of mental spaciousness, where thoughts can be held without immediate judgment, emotions can coexist without conflict, and choices can exist without urgency, creating a reflective, restful awareness that mirrors the probabilistic, inclusive nature of the quantum world. And as we consider Schrödinger's famous thought experiment, where a cat is simultaneously alive and dead until observed, we recognize that superposition is not about contradiction or chaos, but about the gentle coexistence of multiple realities, all balanced until interaction, perception, or alignment resolves them. And this principle nurtures calm, because it reassures that uncertainty is natural, that multiple potential outcomes can coexist, and that clarity or resolution emerges through gentle observation and participation, rather than through force, worry, or strain. And as we imagine superposed quantum systems interacting across the universe, forming interference patterns, entanglement, and collective behaviors, we perceive a web of potentialities, an invisible lattice of possible states guiding motion, interaction, and evolution without disruption, a system of harmonious potential that mirrors the ideal state of the mind at rest, where possibilities can float freely, integrate, and influence one another without immediate pressure. And this awareness encourages reflection, patience, and trust in natural timing, because just as a quantum system resolves probabilistically according to its context, human thoughts, choices, and actions can unfold gradually, guided by underlying patterns rather than forced outcomes. And as we consider technological applications, such as quantum computing, where qubits exist in superposition to hold immense amounts of information simultaneously, we notice that superposition allows efficiency, creativity, and power without conflict or competition, demonstrating that multiplicity, coexistence, and flexibility are not only possible, but advantageous. And this insight resonates with mental and emotional life, suggesting that holding multiple perspectives, possibilities, and intentions at once can be enriching, productive, and stabilizing, allowing the mind to remain flexible, aware, and calm, even in the presence of uncertainty. And as we trace this concept further into natural systems, we realize that superposition underlies the emergence of interference patterns in light and matter, guiding evolution, chemistry, and biological processes, showing that multiplicity and coexistence create structure, order, and adaptability, a model for thinking about life, perception, and interaction as continuous, interwoven, and non-linear, and this recognition supports a meditative, reflective state, where awareness can float gently, perceiving connections, possibilities, and flows without demanding resolution. And as we imagine holding superposed states in consciousness, thoughts can exist in parallel, emotions can be experienced without immediate evaluation, and mental tension can dissolve, replaced by a sense of spaciousness, fluidity, and patient observation. And this inner landscape mirrors the quantum reality, in which multiple possibilities are maintained, balanced, and coordinated until observation, interaction, or natural evolution resolves them. And as we extend this metaphor to the cosmos, we recognize that galaxies, stars, particles, and waves exist in overlapping potentials, each influencing the other, creating coherence without coercion, rhythm without urgency, and stability without rigidity. And this cosmic perspective encourages calm, because it situates human life within a universe that supports coexistence, multiplicity, and natural resolution, a universe in which influence, creation, and change emerge subtly, gently, and reliably, without force or immediate demand. And ultimately, superposition provides both a scientific and meditative lesson, that existence is not singular, that possibilities can coexist harmoniously, and that awareness, observation, and patience allow potential to unfold naturally, revealing the elegance, calm, and profound adaptability of reality itself. And as we imagine drifting within this web of overlapping potentialities, tracing the paths of possibilities, and observing outcomes emerge without stress or coercion, we are invited to relax, release control, and trust in the gentle unfolding of life, thought, and the universe, allowing consciousness to float freely in the space of infinite potential, cradled by the quiet, expansive, and reassuring rhythm of superposition. Quantum entanglement is a phenomenon that defies ordinary intuition, where two or more particles become linked in such a way that the state of one immediately influences the state of the other, regardless of the vast distance separating them. And this mysterious connection, which Albert Einstein famously called spooky action at a distance, invites profound reflection on the nature of relationship, influence, and interconnectedness across space and time, because it demonstrates that at a fundamental level, separation is often illusory, that even when particles are light years apart, their fates remain entwined. And as we contemplate this, the mind is encouraged to consider the subtle networks of connection that exist in our own lives, in which actions, intentions, and presence can ripple outward, influencing distant outcomes in ways that may not be immediately visible. And this understanding is calming, because it suggests that even when we feel isolated, distant, or unobserved, our existence and choices continue to participate in a web of meaningful interactions, unseen yet influential. And as we imagine a pair of entangled electrons, spinning in perfect correlation, no matter how far apart they drift, we perceive a harmony and synchronization that is invisible but precise, a coordination that operates beyond our direct perception, yet shapes reality consistently, gently reinforcing the principle that unseen forces can maintain order, guide motion, and preserve balance, a concept that resonates with emotional and cognitive states, showing that stability, trust, and coherence do not require constant observation, control, or immediate understanding. And as we scale this idea to larger systems, entanglement can be seen not merely as a curiosity of particles, but as a model for subtle, invisible coordination that underlies the universe. From the interactions of molecules within living cells to the gravitational and energetic webs connecting stars, galaxies, and dark matter, and within this cosmic dance, influence is instant, yet gentle, guiding outcomes without aggression or force. A lesson for the mind that quiet alignment and connection can have profound consequences, even when imperceptible. And as we consider experimental demonstrations of entanglement, such as the instantaneous correlation of photon polarizations measured across kilometers, or even in space, we recognize that reality allows for simultaneity, coherence, and coordination that transcends ordinary boundaries, a principle that encourages patience, trust, and surrender, because it shows that alignment and relationship do not always require visible intervention or immediate results. And as we reflect on the implications of entanglement for information, computation, and communication, we notice that the flow of influence can bypass conventional constraints, suggesting that the universe operates with layers of subtle interaction, continuous feedback, and gentle synchronization, a model that invites humans to cultivate awareness of the unseen, to trust the patterns that emerge across time and space, and to recognize that presence, attention, and intention matter, even when their effects are not immediately apparent. And emotionally, this recognition is profoundly comforting, because it mirrors the way that love, support, care, and understanding often extend beyond direct observation, influencing lives, relationships, and environments quietly yet effectively. And as we imagine these entangled particles, tracing invisible links across the cosmos, we perceive a lattice of connection, a silent network, in which each component contributes to the behavior of the whole, where distance does not weaken influence, and where every interaction resonates through a subtle, integrated pattern. And this vision fosters mental relaxation, because it suggests that life, thought, and experience are inherently connected, that isolation is temporary, and that participation in the greater system does not require force, effort, or immediate comprehension. And as we explore the practical implications of entanglement in quantum technologies, such as teleportation of quantum states or quantum encryption, we recognize that these invisible threads enable secure, instantaneous transmission of information, illustrating that connection need not be bound by conventional distance, that influence can be non-local, and that coordination can occur without visible intermediaries, a metaphor for trust, communication, and support in human systems. And as we imagine tracing the invisible lines linking entangled particles, we sense a rhythm, a subtle, gentle pulse that carries coherence through the universe, maintaining balance, reinforcing stability, and allowing distant components to respond in harmony. And this awareness encourages reflective meditation, because it shows that even unseen influences maintain order, that subtle alignment supports enduring structure, and that calm, quiet networks can exist and function without dramatic display or urgent intervention. And as we extend this awareness to the mind, we notice that thoughts, feelings, and memories often operate in entangled ways, influencing one another across time, space, and context, guiding decisions, shaping perception, and providing continuity, yet doing so without immediate visibility, force, or disruption. And this observation supports mental rest, because it demonstrates that integration and coordination happen naturally, allowing the mind to trust its processes, release tension, and flow gently with life's rhythms. And as we imagine drifting through the cosmos, observing entangled particles, correlated stars, and interconnected matter, we perceive a universe that is neither chaotic nor disconnected, but deeply relational, where influence flows silently, instantaneously, and effectively, shaping motion, creation, and evolution across scales. And this recognition fosters a sense of belonging, security, and reassurance, because it mirrors the fundamental connectivity that underlies human experience, suggesting that even when separate, distant, or seemingly unrelated, we are part of a vast, coherent, responsive system. And as we consider entanglement across time, we notice that correlations persist even when systems evolve, showing that the memory of connection, the imprint of influence, and the persistence of relationship endure across change, a comforting thought that aligns with the principle of continuity in human life, where actions, choices, and presence leave lasting traces that ripple outward, often in unseen ways. And as we allow this understanding to permeate our awareness, a profound sense of calm emerges, because we recognize that the universe is organized through connection, that relationships exist beyond observation, and that even the vastness of space does not diminish the coherence, coordination, or harmony of interacting systems, and ultimately, entanglement teaches that distance does not sever influence, that separation is often illusory, and that the threads connecting all things operate silently, patiently, and with perfect balance, offering a model for mental, emotional, and spiritual rest, in which awareness can expand, surrender, and float freely, cradled by the invisible yet powerful connections that structure the universe, guide motion, and sustain life. A cosmic lullaby of connection, subtle influence, and serene harmony. Quantum tunneling is a phenomenon that stretches our intuition to its limits, where particles seemingly defy classical boundaries by passing through energy barriers that would be insurmountable under normal physics, and this remarkable ability, where electrons, protons, or even entire atomic structures traverse regions they should not be able to occupy, invites profound reflection on the nature of possibility, patience, and subtle influence, because it demonstrates that limits, obstacles, and boundaries are often permeable at fundamental levels, suggesting that in the deep structure of reality, what appears absolute may, in fact, be fluid, conditional, and probabilistic, and as we consider this, the mind is encouraged to release rigidity, to imagine solutions beyond apparent constraints, and to understand that progress, movement, and emergence can occur even when the path seems blocked or improbable. A lesson that resonates not only with physical processes, but with emotional, cognitive, and creative experience, showing that breakthroughs can arise through subtle persistence rather than force, and that the unexpected can emerge quietly, without fanfare, yet with profound effect. And as we imagine a particle approaching an energy barrier, vibrating with quantum uncertainty, sensing the probability of passing through, we perceive a universe that operates through gentle negotiation, chance alignment, and the probabilistic weaving of possibilities, and this perception fosters patience and trust, because it demonstrates that processes unfold according to deep rules that are precise yet flexible, that outcomes can arise through indirect or subtle paths, and that persistence, alignment, and timing are as effective as force, and as tunneling occurs across microscopic scales, enabling nuclear fusion in stars, alpha decay in radioactive elements, and even the operation of semiconductors and modern electronics, we notice that such imperceptible processes have colossal consequences, shaping life, energy, and technology, showing that quiet, invisible mechanisms often underpin the most vital and dynamic systems, and this realization is calming, because it reminds us that small, unseen actions can carry immense weight, that subtlety can be powerful, and that persistence over time enables results that appear miraculous, yet emerge naturally from consistent laws. And as we consider tunneling from a human perspective, it becomes a metaphor for moving through challenges, overcoming mental barriers, and traversing limitations imposed by perception, circumstance, or expectation, illustrating that even seemingly impenetrable obstacles can be navigated when approached with patience, awareness, and adaptability. And this insight is profoundly reassuring, because it suggests that limitations in life, thought, or emotion are often conditional, rather than absolute, that persistence, strategy, and timing allow motion through resistance, and that the universe itself is structured to accommodate unexpected transitions, openings, and breakthroughs. And as we imagine tunneling events occurring in stars' cores, where hydrogen nuclei overcome electrostatic repulsion to fuse into helium, releasing energy that powers entire galaxies, we perceive that what seems improbable on a small scale can have cosmic implications, a reflection that encourages perspective, patience, and awe, showing that small, subtle, or unseen acts contribute to vast structures, ongoing processes, and enduring stability. And as we shift focus to technological applications, quantum tunneling underlies devices from scanning tunneling microscopes to flash memory, demonstrating that harnessing these invisible processes allows humans to manipulate, explore, and interact with reality in ways that were once unimaginable. a reminder that deep understanding, alignment with natural laws, and attention to subtle patterns provide leverage far beyond immediate perception, and this notion supports calm, reflective engagement with life, because it shows that careful observation, patience, and knowledge of underlying structures yield progress and influence, often quietly and steadily, without dramatic confrontation. And as we consider the probabilistic nature of tunneling, where a particle has a calculable chance to pass through a barrier, we recognize a universe that balances determinism with possibility, structure with flexibility, predictability with chance, and this balance mirrors the mind's optimal state, where intention, awareness, and subtle action coexist with openness to unexpected outcomes, creating a space in which motion, thought, and growth proceed effortlessly, harmoniously, and without struggle. And as we imagine countless particles tunneling across countless barriers simultaneously, from atoms within the human body to protons in distant stars, we perceive a rhythm of gentle, persistent movement, a cosmic pulse in which change, transformation, and emergence occur naturally within the framework of probability and law. And this rhythm is soothing, because it illustrates that life, energy, and consciousness operate continuously, quietly, and reliably, even amidst apparent barriers or challenges. And as we expand awareness to include the macroscopic effects of tunneling, we see that fusion in the sun releases light and warmth. Radioactive decay shapes geological and chemical processes, and electronic devices function with efficiency, all arising from countless imperceptible transitions. And this awareness fosters gratitude, patience, and a sense of security, because it reassures us that systems are supported by intricate, reliable processes that operate without demand for attention, effort, or recognition. And as we meditate on the elegance of tunneling, where obstacles are negotiated not by brute force, but by probabilistic opportunity, we can imagine similar principles applying to mental and emotional life, where patience, adaptability, and alignment with underlying structures allow ideas, intentions, and solutions to emerge despite apparent resistance. And this parallel encourages reflective calm, showing that persistence need not be frantic, influence need not be aggressive, and progress can be steady, subtle, and profound. And as we visualize tunneling across cosmic scales, from stars' fusion to interstellar particle interactions, a sense of interconnectedness emerges, where even the smallest event contributes to larger patterns of energy, matter, and motion. And this perception mirrors the holistic flow of life, demonstrating that continuity, influence, and effect are not always visible, yet they are real, reliable, and sustaining. And as we follow these gentle, probabilistic currents, a mental state of surrender, trust, and observation develops, where one can release control, rest within process, and perceive the elegance of systems operating harmoniously without effort or tension. And ultimately, quantum tunneling serves as both a physical and metaphorical model, illustrating that barriers, limits, and resistance can be navigated, that persistence and subtlety produce profound outcomes, that unseen processes guide stability and creation, and that the universe operates with a quiet, patient rhythm that nurtures reflection, calm, and deep, unhurried rest, a cosmic lullaby of movement through obstacles, gentle emergence, and enduring coherence. Wave-particle duality is one of the most mind-expanding and gentle paradoxes of quantum physics, where light and matter simultaneously exhibit characteristics of both waves and particles. And this duality challenges classical intuition, while offering a quiet lesson in flexibility, balance, and coexistence, because it shows that seemingly contradictory behaviors can inhabit the same entity without conflict, inviting reflection on the ways that identity, perception, and existence themselves may be layered, multifaceted, and context-dependent. And as we consider a photon, or an electron moving through space, sometimes manifesting as a diffuse wave of probability, other times striking as a localized particle, we begin to perceive the universe, not as rigid or one-dimensional, but as fluid, adaptable, and multidimensional, where perspective and context determine the observed outcome, and this awareness fosters a sense of ease, because it suggests that contradictions, dualities, or uncertainties in our own experience do not require resolution through force or haste, but can coexist peacefully, revealing richness and complexity that are inherently stable. And as we imagine light traveling through a double-slit experiment, generating interference patterns that simultaneously demonstrate particle-like impacts on a detector screen, we sense a universe that operates through subtlety, harmony, and emergent order, where outcomes are guided by overarching principles rather than brute control, and this perception can be meditative, because it models a state of flow where multiple truths, paths, or expressions can coexist without clash, allowing the mind to rest in acceptance rather than striving for simplification. And as we consider that electrons forming matter also exhibit wave-like diffraction when passing through crystalline lattices, producing patterns that are predictable yet probabilistic, we recognize that the fabric of reality accommodates multiplicity, uncertainty, and patterns simultaneously, and this insight encourages patience, tolerance, and reflection, suggesting that complexity does not equate to disorder, and that subtle structures underlie even the most paradoxical behaviors, offering reassurance that balance and coherence exist, even amidst apparent contradiction. And as we extend this understanding to the macroscopic implications of wave-particle duality, we notice that technologies such as electron microscopes, lasers, and quantum computers leverage this duality, harnessing both localized and distributed properties to manipulate matter and energy with precision, demonstrating that embracing duality allows control and creation without imposing rigid constraints, and this realization is calming, because it shows that understanding, adaptation, and gentle alignment with natural principles enable influence without force, mirroring how human cognition, creativity, and emotional processing benefit from holding multiple perspectives simultaneously, without striving to collapse complexity into simplistic outcomes. And as we imagine observing particles behaving as waves in the probabilistic field, spreading across space as a cloud of potential, before manifesting as discrete impacts, we perceive that potential and actuality coexist, that possibilities are never absent, and that manifestation arises naturally, gently, and predictably from underlying structures. And this observation mirrors life's unfolding processes, suggesting that not all outcomes need immediate visibility, and that growth, movement, and insight can occur quietly within an expansive field of latent potential, fostering trust, patience, and relaxation. And as we consider wave-particle duality in relation to human perception, we recognize that people, ideas, and experiences can simultaneously occupy multiple roles, express contrasting qualities, and exist in tension without fracturing coherence, illustrating that duality is a natural state, a reflection of richness rather than confusion. And this understanding supports calm, integrative thinking, because it allows the mind to hold ambiguity without strain, to accept multiple truths without urgency, and to rest in the balance of coexistence. And as we visualize photons of starlight traversing interstellar space, moving as waves but impacting as particles upon entering the eye or a telescope, we are reminded that observation itself is a gentle act that interacts with reality, shaping perception without demanding control. And this subtle interplay of seeing and being seen parallels mindfulness, reflection, and restful awareness, where attention is soft, observation is patient, and understanding emerges through engagement without pressure. And as we imagine countless particles in our bodies, behaving both as waves and particles, underlying every thought, sensation, and action, we sense that duality pervades the smallest scales of life itself, reinforcing that complexity, multiplicity, and layered existence are not chaotic, but deeply harmonious, providing a framework within which stability and change coexist seamlessly. And this realization encourages deep rest, because it suggests that coherence and meaning do not require simplification, that existence can be rich, layered, and balanced without strain, and that patterns, flow, and function arise naturally even when behaviors appear contradictory. And as we expand this meditation to include entire systems, from atoms to molecules to living cells, we perceive that wave-particle duality models the integration of multiple modes of being, showing that flexibility, adaptability, and context-sensitive responses sustain structure, function, and growth across scales, and this awareness is soothing, because it demonstrates that the universe operates with consistency and harmony even amidst complexity, that contradictions do not need to be resolved violently, and that life, motion, and cognition can flourish within a framework of layered truths, balance, and interplay. And as we imagine drifting through the quantum fabric, where particles shift seamlessly between wave and particle states, where probabilities shape outcomes and interactions occur without force, we sense a rhythm, a gentle cadence that mirrors natural patterns of breathing, attention, and thought, encouraging a state of reflective calm where awareness flows without tension, perceives without urgency, and integrates without struggle. And as the mind rests in this awareness, wave-particle duality becomes more than a physical phenomenon, transforming into a model for perception, adaptability, and harmony, illustrating that the coexistence of multiple modes, perspectives, or truths is not only possible, but essential for stability, creation, and understanding, and that within this coexistence, patience, observation, and gentle engagement produce outcomes that are profound, reliable, and restorative, and ultimately, wave-particle duality teaches that reality is neither singular nor rigid, but fluid, layered, and beautifully integrated, offering a cosmic lullaby in which multiplicity, harmony, and balance allow consciousness to drift freely, to rest in spacious awareness, and to observe without pressure, carried gently through the probabilistic, luminous, and interconnected dance of the universe, night after night. Across infinite scales of time and space, the role of observation in quantum mechanics introduces one of the most subtle and profound bridges between the universe and consciousness, where the act of measurement attention or observation appears to influence the very state of a particle, guiding it from a cloud of probabilities into a concrete outcome. And this principle, often illustrated by the collapse of the wave function, provides a gentle metaphor for the ways in which awareness shapes experience, perception, and understanding, because it suggests that reality is not entirely separate from observation, and that participation, whether conscious, attentive, or even subtle, carries influence. Yet this influence need not be forceful, abrupt, or domineering, but can operate quietly, gently, and with inherent patience, mirroring the natural rhythms of life and thought. And as we imagine a photon existing in a superposition of multiple paths, traveling simultaneously through all possibilities, and then settling into a single trajectory upon interaction with a measuring device, we perceive that potential and actuality coexist, until observed, a duality that resonates with the mind's ability to entertain ideas, emotions, and possibilities without immediate resolution, fostering a reflective, expansive state that is calming and meditative, because it models how presence, attention, and gentle acknowledgement allow processes to unfold naturally, rather than forcing conclusions prematurely. And as we extend this awareness to the human scale, the metaphor suggests that consciousness itself, by attending to thoughts, feelings, or choices, does not impose chaos but provides guidance, focusing possibilities into expression while maintaining harmony and coherence. And this guidance is subtle, indirect, yet effective, reminding the mind that the most profound influence often arises from patient, consistent, and receptive attention, rather than aggressive control. And within this framework, the universe behaves like a vast, interconnected system where observation, interaction, and context shape outcomes. Yet each event occurs within a continuum of natural law, illustrating that influence is both gentle and reliable, and this reliability fosters security, trust, and the ability to rest in awareness, knowing that participation does not require coercion, and that order, stability, and flow are maintained even as possibilities collapse into manifestation. And as we consider experiments such as the double, slit, delayed choice, or quantum eraser setups, where the presence or absence of measurement affects outcomes, we sense that observation operates as a soft guiding principle rather than a violent imposition, shaping the emergence of reality while preserving underlying harmony. And this subtle power parallels mindfulness, reflection, and meditation, practices in which awareness interacts with thoughts and sensations without interference, creating clarity, coherence, and restfulness. And as we imagine observing particles existing in superpositions, their potentialities vast and varied, we are invited to reflect on the expansiveness of possibility inherent in consciousness itself, recognizing that attention can be a quiet shaping force, guiding the transition from latent potential to realized experience. And this recognition is calming, because it reassures the mind that influence, creation, and change need not be rushed, forced, or anxious, but can unfold gracefully under patient, attentive presence. And as we extend this insight to relationships, creativity, and decision-making, we perceive that observation, attention, and mindful engagement gently collapse complexity into meaningful form, allowing patterns, structure, and understanding to emerge organically. And this organic emergence parallels the universe's own processes, suggesting that the mind, like the quantum field, is most effective when flowing with awareness, integrating multiple possibilities, and guiding outcomes with subtlety and patience, rather than attempting rigid control. And within this gentle influence, we observe that consciousness operates not as an external, dominating force, but as an intimate participant within the web of reality, where attention interacts, guides, and collaborates with inherent tendencies, probabilities, and structures, producing outcomes that are balanced, coherent, and deeply satisfying. And this model is profoundly reassuring, because it demonstrates that presence matters, that awareness has effect, yet this effect does not disturb harmony, impose stress, or demand urgency, offering a pathway to rest, reflection, and meditative engagement. And as we imagine countless observers across the cosmos, each interacting subtly with their environment, shaping outcomes without violent interference, we sense a universe that is participatory, responsive, and integrated, where every act of observation contributes to a larger flow, without chaos, disruption, or imbalance. And this participation nurtures a feeling of connection, embeddedness, and trust, illustrating that influence can be profound, even when gentle, invisible, or indirect. And as we visualize quantum systems, resolving into definite states through observation, yet remaining nested within an expansive field of potential, we perceive a balance between freedom and structure, spontaneity and guidance, uncertainty and clarity, a balance that echoes the ideal state of mind for deep rest, contemplation, and emotional stability. And within this balance, the mind can release tension, observing without striving, attending without urgency, and guiding without force, a state that mirrors the universe's own gentle orchestration, where outcomes are emergent rather than imposed, and where the interplay between potential and actuality unfolds with patience, consistency, and grace. And as we imagine drifting through these quantum fields, where observation gently collapses waves into particles, probabilities into events, and latent potential into realized phenomena, we are invited into a meditative awareness that is expansive, calm, and integrative, sensing that consciousness itself is not separate from the fabric of reality, but intimately linked. And this link reassures, comforts, and soothes, because it models how attention, presence, and care can shape experience while preserving harmony, flow, and balance. And as we extend this reflection to the infinite scales of the universe, from subatomic particles to galaxies, we perceive that the principle of gentle collapse through observation resonates universally, showing that attentive participation, patience, and responsiveness allow systems to evolve, organize, and function without chaos, coercion, or disruption. And this realization fosters deep calm, because it parallels the natural processes of cognition, creativity, and life, demonstrating that even in complex, probabilistic, or uncertain environments, coherence, structure, and beauty arise naturally when observation, awareness, and care guide without forcing. And as our attention rests upon this model, the distinction between observer and observed softens, revealing a continuum of interaction, influence, and subtle guidance, a continuum that is both grounding and liberating, teaching that awareness itself is restorative, balancing potential and actuality, order and flow, presence and emergence. And as we drift along this awareness, contemplating the gentle, quiet power of observation shaping reality, the mind settles into a rhythm that mirrors the universe, expansive yet coherent, subtle yet effective, patient yet enduring, and ultimately, this reflection on the role of observation, consciousness, and collapse becomes a cosmic lullaby, guiding thought, attention, and awareness into a state of restful integration, floating gently within the vast field of possibilities, carried along the serene flow of quantum potential, and resting in the knowledge that observation, in its quiet, attentive, and participatory manner, is a force that shapes existence without strain, a model for consciousness, meditation, and deep, unhurried mental repose, quantum entanglement. One of the most mysterious and profound phenomena in physics, reveals that particles separated by vast distances can remain deeply connected, such that the state of one instantaneously influences the state of another, and this instantaneous connection transcends classical notions of space, time, and locality, offering a vision of the universe that is fundamentally interwoven, where separation is apparent but not absolute. And this idea, when reflected upon from a mental and emotional perspective, provides a gentle model for understanding interconnectedness, because it demonstrates that distance does not eliminate influence, that presence can exist without proximity, and that systems, whether subatomic or cosmic, can maintain coherence across space without effort, force, or interruption. And as we imagine a pair of entangled particles, light years apart yet synchronized in state, we sense that the cosmos itself may operate as a vast, subtle web of relationships, a network in which all elements are linked invisibly, their interactions immediate yet non-intrusive. And this network mirrors the quiet, unseen connections in our own lives, from emotional bonds to systems of cause and effect, reminding us that influence can be pervasive, gentle, and reassuring, even when invisible. And as we contemplate the implications of entanglement, for the flow of information and causality, we recognize that the universe does not require direct contact, loud signals, or immediate sensory confirmation to maintain coherence, but instead relies on subtle, underlying principles that operate persistently and reliably. And this insight can be profoundly calming, because it reassures the mind that stability, order, and connection persist even beyond immediate perception, that systems are integrated, and that support often exists in forms that are quiet, unobtrusive, and yet fully effective. And as we extend this awareness to larger scales, imagining clusters of entangled particles forming chains, networks, and even cosmic scale linkages, we perceive a universe in which every element participates in a web of subtle influence, each motion, change, or interaction propagating across space in ways that maintain harmony, balance, and coherence. And this realization fosters a sense of trust, belonging, and integration, because it suggests that even when isolated or distant, each element, whether particle, star, or human, remains part of an interconnected whole, contributing meaningfully without exerting force, demanding attention, or creating conflict. And as we focus on the interplay between entangled particles and their environments, we notice that these connections are not static, but responsive, adapting gently to changes while preserving underlying correlations. And this adaptive, yet stable, nature is reassuring, because it models how life, consciousness, and thought can evolve with grace, maintaining harmony even amid change, pressure, or apparent separation. And as we imagine this invisible web, extending across galaxies, binding particles, stars, and perhaps even dark matter into a network of subtle influence, we sense that the universe itself operates like a vast, gentle mind, where connection is instant yet unobtrusive, where communication occurs without disruption, and where relationships of cause and effect are distributed in a balanced, elegant manner. And this cosmic perspective invites the mind to relax, because it parallels mental, emotional, and social networks, illustrating that influence, care, and integration can exist without noise, conflict, or coercion. And as we visualize entangled systems responding instantaneously to changes in distant partners, we perceive that the fabric of reality is alive with subtle information flow, a constant dialogue in which each element participates without forcing outcomes. And this perception models how attention, empathy, and awareness operate in human experience quietly, consistently, and effectively, sustaining harmony, guiding processes, and enabling adaptation without strain. And within this framework, we recognize that our own consciousness may be embedded in similar layers of subtle influence, entangled with others in ways that transcend immediate sensory perception, and this awareness fosters humility, patience, and the release of anxiety, because it demonstrates that the universe, like the mind, supports coherent function through invisible connections, balancing freedom and constraint, spontaneity and guidance, separation and unity. And as we extend this meditation further, considering that entanglement may link regions of space, time in ways still unseen, we sense that all events, from the birth of a star to the flutter of human thought, participate in a grand choreography, a cosmic dance of correlation, influence, and subtle guidance. And this dance is gentle, continuous, and patient, unfolding across billions of years and trillions of kilometers, yet maintaining balance, stability, and coherence. And the recognition that distance does not diminish connection, that presence can exist without visibility, and that influence can operate instantaneously, without disruption, provides a profound model for mental calmness, emotional equilibrium, and spiritual reflection, because it reassures that support, guidance, and interconnection are ever present, even when unseen, intangible, or abstract. And as we drift through this vision of a subtly entangled universe, observing the invisible threads that bind matter, energy, and information across space, the mind can adopt the rhythm of these gentle connections, flowing with awareness, tracing relationships without effort, and appreciating the elegance of coherence within complexity. And as we imagine following chains of entangled particles, stretching across light years yet responding instantaneously, we perceive a reality in which separation is temporary, influence is pervasive, and the universe functions through quiet, patient, and coordinated interaction. And this perception nurtures a sense of awe, trust, and deep relaxation, because it shows that even immense systems can operate seamlessly without chaos, force, or urgency, and that stability arises from the integration of many small, subtle, and interconnected processes. And within this mental landscape, the mind can settle, releasing tension, rushing, or control, and aligning instead with the gentle flow of entangled influence, tracing patterns, relationships, and rhythms across space and time. A meditative drift that mirrors the fundamental nature of reality, where every connection matters, every interaction resonates, and coherence emerges naturally through the patient orchestration of invisible links. And as we allow this awareness to expand, encompassing the Milky Way, neighboring galaxies, and the broader cosmic web, the sense of interconnectedness deepens, illustrating that the universe is a vast network in which distance, time, and individuality coexist with unity, correlation, and instant resonance. And this understanding fosters profound calm, perspective, and gratitude, reminding us that participation in the cosmos is ongoing, subtle, and supportive, and that being part of this entangled whole requires no struggle, only presence, attention, and receptivity. And as we drift further, contemplating that even human thoughts, intentions, and actions may resonate across unseen networks, subtly influencing, guiding, and harmonizing with larger systems, the mind naturally relaxes, anchored in the knowledge that connection, effect, and influence do not require force, noise, or immediacy, and that the cosmos, through entanglement, demonstrates the elegance of unity, the stability of relational coherence, and the serenity of persistent, patient, invisible guidance, and ultimately, the awareness of quantum entanglement offers a cosmic lullaby, a meditative, unhurried understanding that the universe is deeply interconnected, responsive yet gentle, immediate yet unobtrusive, and that within this infinite network, the mind, body, and spirit can rest, observe, and flow peacefully, carried along the gentle currents of invisible connection, floating within a universe that is patient, coherent, and endlessly reassuring.